Good evening. Welcome to Town Council meeting on July 18th, our one and only meeting in July. I need to make this announcement. In accordance with MGL Chapter 30A, Section 20, I must inquire whether anyone here is recording this meeting, and if so, to please make their presence known. I see no hands, no volunteers for that. So we are, in fact, recording this meeting. And if you see me winking, I'm not winking at you. I just have a little eye distortion thing going on, so it's easier for me to see if I do this versus that. So don't take it personally if I ignore you, okay? But I just wanted you to know. And I have one of these with me. And I have one of these with me. And I have Craig to fill in if I can't stand it anymore, okay? Thank you. All right, roll call, please.
Councilors: Bloom,
Here.
Burdick,
Present.
Clark,
Here.
Crow,
Here.
Levesque,
Here.
Ludke,
Here.
Mendes,
Here.
Neary,
Here.
Penn,
Here?
Schnepp,
Here.
Starr, Tamash,
Here.
Turkelson.
Here.
You have quorum, thank you.
Thank you. So, we have Pledge of Allegiance. Please rise.
Good evening. It's my pleasure to introduce Bob Kilmartin, who will be leading us in the Pledge of Allegiance tonight. Bob was a colonel in the Marines. He enlisted in the Marine Corps Reserve at age 17, served active duty for the next 34 years, graduated from the University of Mass and Villanova Law School. Served numerous assignments, including trial counsel, chief defense counsel, military judge, director of legal assistance at Marine Corps Base Camp Pendleton. He deployed to Iraq in 2004-2005 as part of Operation Iraqi Freedom. And as I said, he was promoted to colonel while overseas. Bob's last assignment on active duty was a prosecution team leader on the military commission responsible for prosecuting terrorists detained at Guantanamo Bay, Cuba. This entailed temporary duty in Afghanistan investigating battlefield crimes. Bob retired from the U.S. Marine Corps Reserve in 2010. On the civilian side, he continued serving as an assistant district attorney, assistant attorney general, assistant United States attorney. He also served in the Department of Defense as a civilian administrative judge. He resides with his wife locally here in Barnstable Village. We would like to thank him for his service and welcome him. And Bob, would you please lead us in the pledge?
Thank you, Mr. Vice President. Please all face the flag. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, and please remain standing for a moment of silence. I'd like to remember Gloria Rudman, who recently passed. I know she served 12 years, was it, on the town council, and several more before that on the Board of Selectmen. And remember all those close to you. Thank you. Okay, next on the agenda, we have public comment. If you'd like to speak at public comment, please sign in. Make sure the microphone is on.
There it is.
Speak into it, and you have 3 minutes. And Craig here is our timekeeper, so he'll
Okay.
let you know if you're getting close to time off.
All right. Let me introduce myself. I'm Patricia Conway. I'm a resident here of Barnstable for 45 years. I'm an RN, and I ran my husband's medical practice for 40 years. I just want to point out that this project that we've authorized here has red flags all over it, from the beginning to the end, starting with the location. The location is the warmest waters of the whole of New England is Nantucket Sound. And you're putting cables through the seabed that through convection at 170 degrees is going to increase the whole of Nantucket Sound. And this is going to accelerate your climate change, which is what we're trying to do here, right? Climate change. So, and then you're going to say to yourself, where are all the fish? They're gone. So I would like to say that I don't recall giving my informed consent to Avangrid, the town, or Iberdrola to be a test subject on their electronic magnetic fields going through our town, through our beaches, and increasing the heat by the convection of these cables through the town and our well water, and increasing the bacteria count in our drinking water. So I would like to know how you're going to mitigate the increased cancer rate in myself, my grandchildren, and our future grandchildren with increased leukemias, which is already designated and been told by the wires that are above ground, never mind the ones that are sitting right under your butt or through the town that you're walking on, within 10 feet, not up in the air. So I do want to say at the high school meeting last year, please correct me if I'm wrong, but there was a gentleman that got up, I don't know if he said he was from Austerville or not, and he said that he is an international businessman who does projects all over the world. And the first thing that he does is an environmental impact study to that location. And he asked to see the environmental impact study that was done in Barnstable. And was told, and tell me if I'm wrong, that there was none done. That came out clear as a bell to me as irresponsible. So, what do I think? I think this moment in time, I suggest, it's my opinion, that Austerville should succeed from this town and form their own town and take their money. I'm sure there's plenty of smart people that know how to manage money in Austerville that would protect our citizens, my grandchildren, and our future children from this negative effect of the electronic magnetic fields, the contamination of water. You know, it's shocking to me
Richard,
that you
that's
don't
3
see
minutes.
these
If you
red
could finish
flags.
up, please.
Now, the people who voted for this, you sold out for 30 pieces of silver.
Good evening, councilors. My name's Chuck Tuttle, longtime Centerville resident. The beaches on the south side of Nantucket were closed in July. One blade, one windmill. One blade from one windmill closed 100% of the beaches on the south side of Nantucket. If you asked Avangrid about the integrity of their windmills and what happens when a blade self-destructs, they would probably say something like, "We didn't anticipate a problem." And now we let them site an electrical substation in our wellhead protection areas. What happens when something goes wrong there? Avangrid will say something like, "We didn't anticipate a problem." When the town of Barnstable is buying truckloads of bottled water to dispense to residents because our water supply has been compromised, remember this time. When we are all drinking bottled water for a decade or more, remember this time. It's remarkable to me that the outside attorneys for the town of Barnstable, the attorneys that have counseled you in executive session, where you voted to sign easements allowing industrial energy to compromise our town and its residents, These are the same attorneys that represent pro-windmill interests. How do we expect to win a battle against industrial giants when we use their same attorneys? So the town council has capitulated on Craigville Beach. The easements have been signed. The country of France had thousands of windmills offshore. Now they are largely nuclear. Why? Because offshore wind energy is very expensive, intermittent power. And the marine environment accelerates depreciation, speeds the decay of the systems, and they have a very short useful life. Unlike the windmills in desert areas of the United States and around the world, offshore wind energy is very expensive. And allowing industrial power cables carrying more energy than Pilgrim Nuclear Power Plant ever produced to come ashore in recreational and residential areas is inappropriate, dangerous, and destructive. Why are we compromising our health and safety for the very expensive intermittent power? It's beyond me. I just don't understand. I don't know what they told you in your executive sessions, but we must stand and fight. You have capitulated on Craigville Beach. We must not grant access for cable landfalls on Dowses Beach. We are told that Avangrid needs both projects in order for either project to be economically viable. If they don't have Dowses Beach, then God willing, their attack on Craigville Beach will stop. Offshore wind projects are not viable without federal subsidies. In November,
Chuck,
there's...
your 3 minutes are up. If you could
Thank
finish
you.
up, please.
I'll wrap it up. In November, there's likely to be a change in administration at the federal level, and hopefully these wasteful subsidies will stop and Avangrid can go back to Spain and build some windmills there. Please, let's have some common sense. Our town, our lives, our families, our future is priceless. Please, let's not sell it for 20 years of expensive and risky intermittent electrical power. Thank you.
Good evening. Joanne O'Connor from Centerville. I'm going to give everyone here and at home a quick catch-up on what's going on in Nantucket, and this comes from the Cape and Islands NPR. On Saturday, July 13th, a Vineyard Wind turbine blade suffered significant damage 15 miles southwest of Nantucket. Since then, thousands of pieces of fiberglass shards and green and white foam have washed up on South Coast Nantucket beaches. The debris has forced swimming closures and affected local businesses as concerns persist about environmental and economic impacts. Nantucket town officials told the Nantucket Current that they first learned about the damage at 5 p.m. on Monday. Now, remember, this happened on Saturday. The fact that the blade was damaged, but news did not come out immediately has created anger among Nantucket residents, particularly boaters. On Tuesday evening, federal officials ordered a suspension order for Vineyard Wind until the cause of the damage could be determined. During a Nantucket Select Board meeting on Wednesday night, which you should all watch, town officials and locals expressed outrage to representatives for Vineyard Wind and General Electric, the builder and installer of the turbines, or the blade, excuse me, over the impacts on the environment and local businesses. Questions remain. How much is remaining on the turbine? What happens to the debris that falls into the water? What might be the lasting environmental impacts? Update, 1:20 p.m. this afternoon. Nantucket town officials have learned that the remaining portion of the blade had come down at approximately 6:40 a.m., according to an official statement. Officials say they were told that a very large piece of debris broke free and is below the surface. The information marks a discrepancy between what Vineyard Wind and Nantucket town officials are sharing. And when they're sharing it, Vineyard Wind has yet to make mention of any large piece in the water column, telling CAI that as of 8 a.m., the damaged blade was still hanging on. Now, previously, it had come down at approximately 6:40 a.m. Apparently, more than 3 hours later, at 11:22 a.m., the company said a significant part of the blade has detached from the turbine. Town officials say Vineyard Wind is hoping to retrieve fiberglass and foam pieces while they remain offshore, and the company is responsible for collecting all debris for analysis and removal from the island. Talk about the fox in the henhouse. Vineyard Wind is fully responsible for the repercussions on Nantucket, and town administration and the select board will ensure they are held accountable, the statement says. The offshore wind developer has reportedly told the town that the majority of the interior foam from the entire blade was released on Saturday, but additional debris could wash ashore tonight or tomorrow. Update, another update. Oh, excuse me, this was prior to the, so that's all I'm going to say, because I should have started the other way. But we have to realize how dangerous this is. This is getting to our fish, our bottom feeders, lobsters, scallops, clams. They're whales. They're absorbing this material, tiny little bits of this material that we're going to eat. We're going to eat this stuff? Come on. This is wrong, absolutely wrong. Thank you.
Good afternoon. My name is Mary Ann Barboza, and I'm speaking on a whole different matter. First, I want to say thank you very, very much to Ms. Jeannie Morrison for Juneteenth celebration. It was the first time in a long time that many of us didn't have to go over the bridge to celebrate. So for that, we are very thankful. And I understand after the meeting somewhat that she was sick, so her speakers, although they did a wonderful job, I really think we missed an opportunity as a people and as a community to educate and make everyone understand. I believe with all my heart that white people, 90% of the white people that come to events like that really come to because they're tired of the status quo. They want change. They want to see things different. I believe that when it comes to blatant racism, they'll be the first ones to stand up and have no problem to speak out against it. But at the same time, many of the white people don't know what to do. They want to be able to help, but they don't want to feel like they're telling people of color or how to run their lives. So we have an opportunity to point things out and to help, and we miss that opportunity. I think just the fact that we're on Main Street is a good time to make people aware of what you see on Main Street, what's going on Main Street. That was a wonderful time to point out the shops that were there have closed because some of the people on Main Street, they're disturbing our businesses. When, of course, you can walk up and down the street and see music and hear music out of every restaurant. And so we should have done that. It was also an opportunity for us to, in a hurry, also an opportunity for us to make white people or anybody different understand why there's so much distrust or why there is so much, I hate to use the word paranoia, but I will, if you will, when they encounter certain white people. I'm blunt. I'm sorry, guys. You know how I am. Well, let's be real. When the people that are out there now, you have Klansmen, mask. You have the new generation of whatever they call themselves, they're masked up. Everyone's in a mask. So you don't know who's who. Now, you may go out the next day and be sitting in a restaurant having coffee with someone, and they're the very person that was marching. You don't know. So you're constantly unsure of who to trust. And then you sit, and to make everyone understand just a little bit of what I'm saying, let's pretend all of you, everybody who's white is on a certain street, dead-end street, just 30 people. You come home and your home is broken into, destroyed, everything stolen, and no one else could have done it but some of those people on that street. You may not verbally say to them, it was you. But every person you're going to look at, you're going to wonder, was it you? Did you come in my home? Did
Mary
you
Ann,
steal?
your 3 minutes are up. If you could finish up, please.
I sure will.
Thank you.
But you're going to look at every person you see on that street and wonder if it was them. So understand where people of color and people who are different or whatever, not different, but according to the racist people in the world, what they're going through. So if you want to make everyone take off their mask and stuff so we know who's who, maybe when they're sitting in a restaurant and somebody approaches, they'll understand. You won't, but thank you, bye.
Good evening, President Penn and Town Council. No carefully scripted 3-minute timed address for me this evening, just an anecdote. I attended the Eastham meeting last evening with all the folks from the Outer Cape towns. About 95% of everyone there was horrified about what's going on. They're overwhelmingly telling BOEM, do not do this to us, please, do not do this to us. But anyway, you'll recall after your vote that kind of shocked all of us, you received a letter from a fellow named Mike Judge. He's an undersecretary in E&A at the state level, and he congratulated all of you and the people of Barnstable for this wonderful thing you've done for the whole country and the planet. And I just felt like toward the end, I wanted to give him a piece of my mind, so I did. And I said to him, I really took offense at some of the things you said in that letter to the town council. Or what would that be? Well, you said that the cables that power Nantucket are just like the cables that are going under the beaches in Barnstable. I said, nothing could be further from the truth. I said, those cables that go to Nantucket carry 35 megawatts of power. I said, how much power do Avangrid's cables carry each, Mike? His answer to me was, I don't know, a lot. And I said, 400 megawatts, Mike. So the next time you want to write to the town council of Barnstable and congratulate them, you should know what you're talking about. Because all of us who have been opposing this have read every single word of every single construction and operations plan, every DEIR, every DEIS, every FEIR, and every FEIS, every filing, every complaint, every challenge to these horrible projects. Just wanted to let you know what I experienced last night. Thanks.
Good afternoon. My name is Larry Moore, and I live in Cotuit. Anecdotally, for years when I was on the conservation...
Larry, could you pick the mic up a little
Sorry.
so we can hear you better?
Yeah. Anecdotally, for years when I was on conservation, I made myself live in this town. And because if I didn't, I couldn't be on the commission anymore. I'm not on the commission anymore. I can live anywhere I want, but I live here. I like it here. I'm working to support you, all of you. But let's get down to the nuts of this. On last town council hearing on the 27th, the minutes, the arrangement was that public comment followed when the House HCA was discussed. It would have been nice to have it done this time because what's at the bottom of this agenda is announcement regarding executive sessions and open meeting law complaint, and the very last item on the agenda is supplemental appropriation order to pay Anderson and Krieger more money. So I'm gonna hit the highlights because I know that Craig has his gavel up there. The executive session, I've been to many of them. Most of the times, we were never told to be secret to everybody. We were never told not to discuss it. It was all about litigation in the most instances. In this particular case, last night I made a list of all the different things that nobody's told me anything, but I know from experience and anticipate. I've got 9 items here I could read, but it's going to use up too much of my time as to what was told to them by the attorneys. I've been an attorney for 50 years. I know how it works. So in this particular case, I'm going to skip over that. But what I'm saying is that the executive sessions, there are no minutes. There's no taping of it. There's just nothing that's ever done. In this particular case, though, the thing that concerns me the most is secrecy. Last summer, when we started putting the whole election process together, the primary thing that the people in the community said, stop secrecy. Stop secrecy. But by God, there sure is a rampant display of secrecy going on right now. The other thing that is of concern deals with the open meeting law. Now, the question I have therefore is whether or not whether public comment will be reopened when those things come up so we can comment about them. I could go into it, but time limit isn't going to let me do it. The two things, though, that I would like you to seriously consider doing. Number one is when it talks about the open meeting law being turned over to legal department, come on. The legal department's already played their hand as to where they are on these issues. The legal department is not the entity within this town or anywhere else to give you advice and tell you what to do. Do not turn the open meeting law. Do the same thing that you're doing. Go out and get your own outside counsel to deal with it properly. Because the open meeting law, in any instances, is always significant and serious. Don't play them down. Don't think because there may be a word missing here
Larry,
or
your 3
something
minutes
else.
are up. If you could finish up, please.
Thank you. So in any event, don't do that. And the final thing is, when it comes to this supplemental appropriation, it says on here, refer to the public hearing on the 15th of August. That's when it's going to be heard and discussed. But why in the world should we be paying Anderson and Krieger any more money? Thank you.
Good evening, Council. My name is Brian Coble, and I'm a full-time resident of Osterville. Craig, I can make this one easy on you. I only have one page of notes, and it's very small. But I do have one question I feel is quite significant. I understand many of you inherited these issues. They're not easy. But I would like to ask, how many times did Avangrid mention blades shattering as a potential danger or disaster in all of your research? I know where I'd put my money, but I'm asking you as a question, almost rhetorically. A former town councilor labeled the folks of Save Greater Stouses Beach as using apocryphal rhetoric in reference to concerns that are very legitimate, researched, and as Suzanne had mentioned, read to the nth degree of alphabet soup. All I can say is you all just saw apocryphal rhetoric wash up all over the South Shore of Nantucket. Please keep that in mind going forward. Thank you.
Hi, guys. Heather Swenson, Centerville, Lake Wequaquet. A couple things to mention. 4-story apartment buildings in an industrial park area of town. Housing developments proposed for our main street amongst our stores and businesses. Apartments plunked in the heart and center of our tourism. Big box store shopping plazas with 10 acres of pavement. Quintessential Cape Cod landscaping of hydrangeas and water fountains torn out and replaced with aqua blue buildings and palm trees. What exactly is happening to our little piece of Cape Cod? And now beaches with warning signs of EMF exposure, micro-tunneling under our river, destruction of 100-plus-year-old trees, multiple 10 to 20-acre substations being built, all within Centerville and West Barnstable. Mr. Levesque, you mentioned at a previous meeting, we've already built a substation and it has all the oil that you're talking about, so why the outrage now? Well, that substation was approved and passed through mostly during COVID times with little to no open meetings and built in an existing industrial section of Barnstable, not abutting the largest freshwater lake on Cape Cod. That is the difference. Ms. Clark, you spoke at West Barnstable Civic Association meeting thanking everyone for coming and voicing their concerns. You had already weeks before voted to allow these projects, leaving your constituents feeling lied to and feeling that their comments did not matter. It is shameful. Growth is not always a positive for a community. Decades from now, this town council, well, 7 of you, and its varied appointed subcommittees will be remembered for this overdeveloped, industrialized Barnstable you are creating. The destruction of a historic Main Street, clear-cutting of wooded areas and residential zones, for massive substations, the overall aesthetic destruction of Centerville. That is going to be your legacy. You were elected to work for the protection of our town, and I think there's been a great misuse of that power. Barnstable is being turned into the ugly sibling of the town capes. It's going to be unrecognizable as a seaside community. No one ever talks about conservation. Where's the Cape Cod Commission, the town council, committees and boards that used to truly strive to keep Cape Cod preserved as a quaint community? It's like we're giving everything away now, and you are all responsible for our town's destruction. It's shameful.
Good evening, Councilors. Peter Hansen, Osterville resident and Calm Water Commissioner. I would first like to thank everyone who continues to fight Avangrid from taking over our town. Special thanks to Suzanne Conley, Sandy Jones, Joanne O'Connor, Chuck Tuttle, Cliff Carroll, Bob Schulte, Gary Peters and Ann, Hector and Stacy, Chris Lazon, the group from Wequaca Lake, and Brian Coble, and all the others that have spoken out against this project. The town councilors who voted to stop Avangrid, I commend you for your courage and common sense. To the town councilors that voted to grant Avangrid the go-ahead, I share the utter shock and disappointment considering all the issues that have been presented to you, including the location of substations over our wellhead protection areas and sole source aquifer, the high voltage cables running under our beaches and through our residential areas, health concerns from doctors regarding EMFs, and the list goes on. I cannot emphasize enough the imminent danger that threatens our drinking water supply. This resource cannot be compromised. Our duties as water commissioners is to protect our wells and be the stewards of overseeing that our fresh water supply is never threatened. We have some of the best water in the state. Why would you jeopardize this? Again, we represent the citizens of Centerville, Osterville, and Marston's Mills. Last night, I tuned into the meeting that took place on Nantucket regarding the blade incident that happened. Please take time to view the YouTube video if you haven't. It shows what a complete disaster this project is, the definition of boondoggle. This is just a glimpse of what is to come. I urge everyone listening to get involved to help shut down this nightmare project. 2 weeks ago, Avangrid boasted that they had all their contracts to proceed with the Park City Wind project. Patrick Johnson forwarded me the press release gloating about the approval. FYI, they do not have all their contracts, and I am sending him the link to the YouTube video regarding the Nantucket disaster, brought to you by Avangrid. We are all tired of the gaslighting, false statements, and empty promises. It's time to wake up, everyone. Together, we can stop this insanity. Thank you for letting me speak.
Good evening, councilors. My name is Cliff Carroll, lifelong resident of Barnstable. Also, in reference to what went on in Nantucket, as a mortgage banker, I did business out there for about 45 years. My real estate company is a member of the Nantucket Board of Realtors, and that video last night was gut-wrenching to see the contortion that those people, 5, 6 generations, are going through out in Nantucket. Avangrid, who I don't care what anybody says, you're all worried about getting sued, but to be honest with you, I'm going to call them liars because that's basically what they are. They did it last night during the meeting. They did it all day today about where the wind blade is. Another blade just showed up off the coast of New York. They flew in people from Denmark, from London last night. They complained because they couldn't land in Nantucket. They wanted to be there. One of them claimed that because they've moved their headquarters to Boston, what's going on in Nantucket is their backyard. What's really sad to see in Nantucket is also what's going on here in Barnstable. As you all know, there's been an open meeting law violation filed, and as you also know, there was an action filed in Barnstable Superior Court today again. So we're starting to tear each other apart because of the lack of the solidarity here on this board. How you can ignore the 200,000 gallons they want to put into West Barnstable on your own description tonight for the meeting, you described this action, and this is directed, by the way, not just at the board, but the legal representation for the town of Barnstable. We are underrepresented, both on our permanent legal team and with Avangrid. I agree with all the people. They described it as a proposed project is proposed to come ashore at Dowse's Beach. Well, they left out with a cable running all the way to West Barnstable, destroying 27 acres of land next to the well fields that are supposed to be the backup wells for this town. Every single person on this board has heard me talk about this for years at the Cape Cod Commission and here. We need to stop ignoring this. You're going to be probably forced to re-vote the vote that you took in 5-7. Some people were missing. Mr. Starr is missing tonight. The seriousness of this can be seen by watching that video in Nantucket. That was 1/3 of one blade that devastated Nantucket. They got $16 million too. They probably already lost it in their reputation for their seafood, beaches, everything. In one day, one part of a blade. They're still going through it right now. 1 gallon of transformer oil will pollute 5 million gallons of our water. Avangrid flew in some suits from Denmark, didn't answer a single question, didn't do anything last night. They left everybody in Nantucket holding the bag again. They're going to do the same thing to us. We need to smarten up. We're dealing with an offshore company that doesn't care a thing about this town. We care about the town. Let's stop tearing each other apart and get united on this. Do the right thing, shut it down, join Nantucket in breaking the host agreement, join them in a lawsuit, let them sue Nantucket and Barnstable.
Cliff, your 3 minutes are up, please.
That would be my recommendation. Thank you very much, especially to the councils that voted against this.
Hi, everyone. I'm Marlise, born and raised in Centerville, currently living in Hyannis. What I'm hoping to comment on today pales in comparison to what everyone else has spoken about, but I live and work on Main Street. Every day, I drive Main Street at a minimum of twice. I work in commercial real estate. I drive Main Street constantly. That being said, the traffic, especially this time of year, is awful. The amount of accidents that happen or almost happen on Main Street is astronomical. If I started keeping a tally of how many times I've been almost in an accident, either with a pedestrian, a bicycle, or a tourist who doesn't know what they're doing with all of the one-way streets, it would be a very long list. I drive very, very carefully, especially going through the intersection at Old Colony, Center Street, and Main Street, because I know how dangerous that intersection can be. And even with how carefully I drive, I have almost hit people trying to run across the street from the train station going towards the harbor. Almost a year ago, we hired an outside firm to give an opinion on how to fix these problems downtown. I'm not a traffic specialist, and I can say, most of us can say, we're not traffic specialists. That's why we hired a professional to help us give an opinion. At the end of all of that, I've heard from multiple people that those problems could be solved with a bucket of paint. And from what I've heard, it keeps getting postponed again and again and again. Minor changes could be made to address this issue, and it's been ignored. And it keeps getting pushed off. And I understand there are big issues that the town is currently facing, a housing crisis, this wind project. There's so many things that you have to have your focus on. But I'm hoping that if this project continues to be pushed off, you would look back at it, see what can be done. Main Street is a dangerous spot. I would love to be able to walk from my job to Main Street, to some of our local businesses, to grab a cup of coffee in the morning, to go into our shops. It's one of the things I was so excited about living on Main Street to be able to do, to walk within my community, to interact with the people in my community. And I don't feel safe walking from the intersection at the hospital to the start of all the businesses on Main Street. That shouldn't be the case. We have the ability to fix it. Something needs to be done.
Anybody else for public comment this evening?
We do have someone. Oh.
Nope. one more live, and then we'll go to remote. Thank you.
Yeah, good evening. My name is Ken Barron. I've been living on Cape Cod for 50 years in Centerville. I went to last night's meeting in Eastham as well. And I'm speaking here on behalf of the fishermen. Don't seem to consider them too much. It seems to be like, oh, well, they're going to lose all this fish, they're going to lose their jobs, and people don't seem to really care about it. But we're going to lose more than just their jobs. We're going to lose a food source industry. Okay? That's no different than taking a bucket of poison and dumping it over our farms in New England. We're going to lose a food source industry for hardworking men and women that risk their lives and their fortunes to bring fresh seafood to the plates of Cape Cod and New England residents. Okay? I just want to make that comment in favor of the fishermen. Thank you.
Thank you.
We have one member of the public on Zoom. Ms. Mock, if you could unmute, you have 3 minutes.
Good evening. Can you hear me? Oh, hi. Good evening, everyone. I'm going to keep this brief. Roberta Mock, 80 Greenwood Ave, Hyannis. I attended that Nantucket meeting. It's just... what we have against us is we've got to stop. We have to stop. In addition to the problem that we have, well, before I move away from that, I'm wondering what is going to happen. I don't want to see any of this fiberglass going into our transfer station at any time down the road with future problems. There needs to be some way they address this where all of these particles get Avangard ships back to their own country. Why should we be left with having to deal with recycling or adding to our transfer problems that we already have? So a real issue with that for our water quality. We have enough problems. Another subject, I don't know if people are aware of the Loch Ness project that's being proposed by Woods Hole Oceanographic. It's an experiment that they would like to do where they would be dumping gallons of sodium hydroxide, which is a toxic chemical to flesh, burning, cause vomiting. I just can't even imagine why Woods Hole thinks that it's okay to use our ocean instead of a lab environment and put our health at risk. That just, the fact that they even are trying to do this experiment in our ocean, in our environment, it just astounds me that this could even be proposed. We're not lab rats. That should be in a controlled environment. Another exposure to risk that just is unacceptable. I had a few people ask me to make a comment about how the town has taken away, and I'm not really aware of the details of this, bus service for elderly people or people who don't have automobiles and need to get to the grocery store or make appointments, that they've taken the scheduled trips away, but yet they were making special trips all the way to Provincetown to service some kind of an event. And that just seemed unfair to me, and I wonder if we could address that as well. Thank you.
Thank you. Anybody else online? No. Okay. Last chance for those present. Mr. Carroll, you have one more thing to say? Quickly.
It's tough to keep the train of thought, but about a week and a half ago, Dr. Turkelson got a letter from the DEP. It informed the town that our Board of Health, which is present in the room, and our water department, being our water supplier, have the responsibility to protect the water systems of our town. The board needs to instruct the Board of Health to enforce the regulations. At the last meeting, they said, well, why don't you give us recommendations and we'll go from there. You know, tell us what we should do. The regulations are there. This is an aquifer protection zone. It's a wellhead protection zone. The guidelines are there about protecting water supplies. They need to monitor, they need to map, and the technology is there. We've already mapped the flow of the underground aquifer. We need to plug in the oil. We know what the points of entry will be. We need to show what the devastation will be. You just saw what one wind blade did drifting up in Nantucket. We need to show what the oil will do drifting into our well fields and into Lake Waquaket. We need to enforce those regulations. Centerville, Ossville, Marston's Mills. From what I understand, there's some contract being passed around right now. It's very similar to another host agreement, Ms. Nober. And from what I understand is that that's being done in secrecy. We need to get that out in the open. We need to make sure they're not going to silence the Centerville, Ossville, Marston's Mills Water Company the same way they've silenced all of you here with the threats of lawsuits. We need to take these people on, and we need to shut them down. Nantucket already lost their $16 million yesterday just from one wind blade. What are we going to lose when we lose our fresh water? What are we going to lose when those transformers let go? Thank you very much for the extra time, but that DEP letter instructing our Board of Health or telling them they have the responsibility to govern our water supplies. We need to enforce it, whether we have new head of Department of Health or Board of Health or not. The board, our board right here, you need to take the responsibility to instruct them to do their job. Thank you.
Larry Moran again. I want to just supplement what Cliff just covered. Most of you know that the chair of the Board of Health for many years, and there's no term limits on these committees, not yet. But the chair, John Norman, has done an outstanding job, first as a town councilor, then as a chair of the Appointments Committee, and especially with Board of Health. He has, I believe, chosen not to be reappointed, but the vice chair is incompetent. He is not capable of handling this issue. He takes the position that every time he's not sure of something, he takes it under advisement or runs to legal, or as he calls it, the legal. The thing that Cliff just presented has got to be taken seriously. And if there's nobody on that committee that's going to do it, find somebody that can be put on the committee to take care of it. Thank you.
Thank you for the recommendation. Okay. We're going to close public comment for the evening. And next we have council response to public comment. Council Lutke.
So much to say. Thank you so much for all of your comments tonight. For my fellow councilors or people in the audience who have not watched that select board meeting from Nantucket, I watched it live last night. It was quite eye-opening. For the gentleman who talked about the fishermen, there were some lobstermen, some other folks speaking there. It really, and they just called it a crisis. And Cliff, you talked about they left Nantucket holding the bag. My goodness, they had their lifeguards picking up the debris, and which is absurd beyond any notion. And at the end of the chair of the select board said, our town employees are no longer going to be picking up your debris. But the thought, there was a woman whose daughter was a lifeguard who spoke about that. I mean, why the lifeguards are picking up that debris is crazy. Larry Moran, you pointed out we have at the end of the agenda the proposal to rehire Anderson Krieger. Never in a million years would I support that. Never, ever, ever. I voted no twice to what they brought to the table. I can't discuss the details, but to me it was not sufficient to the task. It did not service the town of Barnstable. And when I say the town of Barnstable, and it's the same thing I brought up in the high school, one of our speakers tonight brought up the high school meeting. I hope we haven't forgotten that. I hope we don't forget all these incredible things that have occurred and what mostly our citizens have brought forward, like that meeting at the high school. And at the end of it, I spoke, and I asked Mr. Els, because Mr. Els had answered all the questions that night, and he kept saying we. And I said, who's we? I don't know who we is. And I know Attorney Nober gave us all a statement we could use because we can't speak. And it said that those of us who voted yes did the best thing for the town. Well, who's the town? Who's we? Who's the town? And we are the last vestige, the 13 of us, of the town meeting. And you guys are the town of Barnstable. I believe you're the town of Barnstable. The attorney isn't the town of Barnstable. The town manager isn't the town of Barnstable. We work for you. And I think something's gotten turned on its head here, that we're being driven, and several of you have mentioned it, and it was certainly mentioned last night in the Nantucket Select Board, that the attorneys are running this. And if we want to have attorneys, then let's get some attorneys with some backbone that might fight. We say in this last agenda item that we don't support the Dowses Beach. Well, then let's not support it. Let's not hire the same attorneys that brought us such bad advice. Again, I'm speaking for myself. That's why I did 2 no votes. 2. Everyone's talking about the second no vote. There were 2 votes because I was not satisfied with what we were given to work with. The Eastham, Suzanne, you mentioned the judge letter. It wasn't that funny that letter showed up in my inbox as a town councilor the day after it was announced at the town council. It was quite a letter, a long letter. Obviously, Mr. Judge didn't know what was in it, but how was that written so quickly when we didn't even give you people an opportunity to discuss this? How was the state already totally praising what we did when you didn't even know about it? They couldn't have written that letter. When did we leave? 11? And it showed up the next morning? They didn't write it that night. It was written before. And that's very, makes me very angry. As I say, so many good things. But again, those who haven't watched that select board meeting, and of course, Marianne, you're always accurate. You know, you made is Marianne still here? She's met up. But you made a great point. I got an anonymous letter, because I love the point that she brought up, the example of the 30 people on the street. I got an anonymous letter telling me how horrible I am and all that kind of thing. And it does, you look at everybody. Did that person write the letter? Did that person? And it's true. It kind of makes you paranoid, but whatever. But I think that's a great point. It's empathy to understand what it's like. And Marianne always has such a great voice, and I'm honored to be with her on the Housing Committee. We just met before this meeting. As I say, so much to say, but there's going to be a lot of discussion. We can't discuss it tonight, but Larry, you brought it up. The hiring of Anderson Krieger, no way. No way, in my opinion, no way. I don't know what my fellow councilors will say, but if we're really against this, then let's really be against it. Okay, thank you.
Response to public comment? Council response over here? No? Council Schnapp?
Thank you, President Penn. There was a comment tonight about the dangers of our Main Street in Hyannis, and I know it came up at our last meeting in June. And I'm looking at our Assistant Town Manager, Clyburn. We did discuss if there would be any opportunities for any mitigation prior to us doing any major infrastructure work in Hyannis downtown.
Good evening, Town Councilors. Andy Clyburn, Assistant Town Manager. As I promised, we did follow up immediately on that, and there is a project in the works going out for bid that will be constructed this fall to address it. It includes sidewalks, pedestrian crossing. We did explore the CSO. They are not an option. They are not trained in traffic. So that did not pan out as hoped for, but it was good news that in the short term, it is being put out for bid and should be in effect this fall.
Thank you.
Yes.
Council Crowe.
Thank you, President Penn. First, I'd like to comment on both Larry Moran and Cliff Carroll's comments about the Board of Health and the fact that we need to have this board constituted in a way and also doing their job to look after our water supplies. And this is something that we should take seriously. We've asked, the public has asked us to do that, and I think we should be very proactive on that, because that's one of the things that we've got more to worry about than anything else. And also, the other thing I was sort of concerned with that Cliff said was that the COM is in negotiations with Avangrid right now. And I don't know what that's about, but I think the public should know that while it's going on. Avangrid has a history of behind-the-scenes negotiations that turn out to be not so well for the people of this town, and I'd like to see that to come out into the open. In light of the disintegrated wind turbine washing up on Nantucket shores, it would be helpful if our legal department to brief us on protections in Barnstable's HCA with Vineyard Wind should the water have carried the turbine flotsam, basically, onto our beaches instead of Nantucket. It's reported that this technology has been deployed twice, once here and once in the UK, and both of those times that technology of those wind turbines have been shut down because of problems. It's prudent to prepare and to understand what we have to deal with if that happens here. A few of the kinds of questions about the HCA I'd like to see and hear more about is, what are the timing obligations for Avangrid Communications to the town on unforeseen adverse events that affect the environment and the public? It seems we should probably be prepared with a public communications plan if that is a problem. What are the content requirements and standards of those communications? What are Avangrid's obligations on cleanup and the mitigation? And also, what are Avangrid's obligations in relation to compensating our business for their losses, such as our fishing community and tourist-based businesses? I think those are all questions we should be updated by about our own HCA that we've had signed previously to this council. There's so many people commented tonight on what has happened with this company and with the events on Saturday. To wait 48 hours and then to tell the Nantucket public that these things will be washing up on the shore. Some of them were very sharp for understand that fiberglass, when it's broken up, is extremely sharp, and they had basically lifeguards and kids picking this out of the water. And 2 days later, that's the public is told about this. So there's a lot of questions here that remain unanswered. I thought it was interesting and curious, and also somebody mentioned about maybe Barnstable and Nantucket getting together to fight these together. If we were going to get sued, we'd be better off getting sued, not alone. And it's come to the point, in my opinion, that this technology is a little ahead of its time, and it's not it's not fully tested, and I don't think we should be guinea pigs. So thank you.
Councilor Terkelson.
Thank you, President Penn. I think the thing that concerns me most now, I mean, we have the broken blade, and that could certainly happen here. I don't think that was necessarily something I thought that would happen. I guess I assumed at some point, like all good things on the ocean, they fail. I didn't think it would be a catastrophic explosion failure with lots of shards. I thought it might delaminate and maybe need to be replaced. So I guess I was realistic on that end of just how toxic our ocean air can be to components. But I think the biggest thing is the Board of Health issue. You know, I did my own research reaching out to the DEP asking what are the protections that we have as a community, because really so much of our local control was taken away from us. And I will be really sad to see if that effort and the effort of the citizens who've come forward, like Suzanne Connolly, if that goes, into a dark place to die. I think that will be a real tragedy because we actually have a chance to have our voices be heard, where in so many places our voices have been shut out. And I just hope that our legal department doesn't tell us that we can't do that, and I hope that there's not some subversion somewhere working behind the scenes. I did, run on transparency, so I've done my best to do that, but I hope that others will come forward and that we do ask the committee to do the work that needs to be done. We have plenty of residents that are here to help us. We have lots of smart people. And if it's a finance issue, hopefully the council here would consider those options as well. And I appreciate the comments tonight. And I hope that, like people have said, we can come together and find some answers because, like I said, we have a lot of smart people here that are willing to pitch in and help out. And I hope that we can find some paths forward. Thank you.
Thank you. Councilor Clark.
Thank you very much, President Penn. And thanks to all those of you who care enough to come out to our council meetings and speak. Regarding, I'm not so sure I caught the name, Mary Louise, I believe, who voiced some concerns about accidents on Main Street and that she doesn't feel safe. I am privy to the fact that there is an intended update to the Great Streets work for the town of Barnstable, expected to be presented at our next meeting in August 15th at the council. So it's not that nothing's been done. The staff has been working on it, and it was discussed yesterday that there is an expected presentation in August. So look forward to that. Thank you.
Any other comments, reaction? Councilor Neary.
Thank you, Madam President. Thank you, everyone who spoke this evening. Just a couple thoughts. When you're dealing with an organization like Avangrid, suits, they're not something you want to get into. I mean, I think about the things that I cherish in this town, and I kind of use the math and think to myself, what will I lose should we lose? What wonderful things that this town offers may need to be sacrificed in order to fund these type of things. So I kind of had a chuckle the other day when I heard a blade flew off. Through the hard work of our staff and Assistant Manager Clyburn, some of the things that were arrived at is we've got a date firm. And every time this company or this operation has a snafu, a misstep, it brings us closer to that window that may close. So I kind of look at it as a little bit of a good thing that the blade fell off. I just think that maybe that could be something we can consider. There is a time, there's a date certain on this thing. So it's just my thoughts.
I'll let that settle in for a few seconds. Somebody with a very dry sense of humor. Yeah. Okay. No other response to public comment? All right. So do we have Mr. Irwin ready? Okay. He's getting beamed over. Next on the agenda is a presentation by Thomas Irwin. He's got lots of letters after his last name. He's talking about to us, he's contacted us about the paint stewardship program. Have any of you who are concerned about the environment heard about this program? So I offered him an opportunity to address us and to explain it to us so we can ask questions. This is meant to be a workshop, not a lecture. So we can ask him lots of questions and have a give and take. Mr. Irwin, welcome. He lives way out in the western part of the state, so that's why he's beaming in to us.
Thank you. Appreciate the opportunity this evening to speak about paint stewardship. As you know, my name is Tom Irwin. I am from Dalton, way out in the western part of the state. And after 29 years as a chemical engineer and 19 years as a primary care physician, I retired and joined our town's waste management and recycling committee. There, we were facing the same daunting crisis most municipalities face. No landfill, having to haul our waste out of state, and dealing with rapidly ever-increasing hauling costs and tipping fees. After a careful study of ways to address this issue, paint stewardship seemed like the perfect first step. And after confirming it was working well in the eyes of consumers and retailers in Vermont, New York, and Connecticut, I became an advocate for this law. As you probably know, the impetus for even considering product stewardship legislation is the waste crisis, which is the result of 6 million tons of trash being generated annually, having only 3.2 million tons of incineration capacity, and being left with 2.8 million tons of trash needing to be exported from Massachusetts, with hauling and tipping fees increasing by at least 6% annually over the last 5 years, which is since China no longer takes our trash. Paint stewardship, as you know, is a program where unwanted paint can be returned to any participating paint retail store any day they're open without a disposal cost and without regard for where the paint was purchased. This program is voluntary for retailers and transfer stations. As you can see with your first handout, retailers in Vermont freely come and go from the program as suits their business. The cost to consumers is somewhere between 75 cents and $1 per gallon paid at time of purchase. The collected latex is hauled to reprocessing plants, reblended to like new condition, and sold for at most 50% of original cost. The oil-based paints are most often used as co-fuel in cement plants. This program has been working well in 10 states, including our neighboring states of Connecticut, Rhode Island, Maine, and Vermont for over 9 years, and more recently in New York. This program is expanding. In the last year, the states of Illinois and Maryland have adopted paint stewardship laws. Key benefits to Barnstable are, first, it will be a service your residents will value. This is apparent by noting that between 40 and 60% of latex returned to the Enfield, Connecticut, Sherwin-Williams storage week comes from Massachusetts residents, which incidentally is true of all paint stewardship, paint retailers that are within 10 to 15 miles of Massachusetts borders. Also notable, 91% of nearly 1,000 Massachusetts residents dropping items off at household hazardous waste days signed petitions encouraging their legislators to become bill supporters. This suggests that 91% of Barnstable residents with unwanted paint in their basements, and likely there are many, would support having this law. Second, it will present no cost to Barnstable or other municipalities and will decrease household hazardous waste day costs, freeing RDP money for other important solid waste issues. Third, it will be a model for future product stewardship legislation that will address additional larger items such as mattresses, solar panels, rechargeable lithium batteries, and packaging. The resolution being considered is consistent with the state's plans. There is no arm twisting. The MMA, as a supporter, as noted in their testimony to the Environment and Natural Resources Committee, which is your second handout. You'll note that in the middle of that document. The Mass DEP, in their 2030 Solid Waste Master Plan, which is your third handout, and if you look on the back, you'll see it calls out product EPR in general and paint DPR in particular as key contributors to moving the state toward its goal of zero waste. A particular note, this master plan, using 2018 as baseline, calls for a 30% reduction in waste by 2030 and a 90% reduction in waste by 2050. Without stewardship programs, I find it hard to imagine how we possibly could achieve these goals. In addition to the state, there is broad support. Paint manufacturers and paint retailers who helped craft this law from its inception support having this law. The 3,200 Mass residents that signed petitions encouraging their legislators to support this bill, and the embarrassingly large number of Mass residents bringing their unwanted paint to our neighboring states clearly support this law. In the legislature, 28 reps and 12 senators from both parties sponsor or co-sponsor this bill and are supporters. And there is support from 81 municipalities to date that have passed similar resolutions or endorsements, with more expected soon. And on your fourth handout, you will note the towns that have already passed such resolutions. You might ask if we can wait. To implement stewardship legislation to address the larger items like mattresses and solar panels, as we discussed, will take a minimum of 15 to 20 years of concerted effort to accomplish. Hence, it is in our best interest that we begin now with the first step, paint stewardship. So what is our next step? Well, House legislators have commented that we needed to demonstrate that paint stewardship was a municipal priority to compel serious consideration of paint stewardship by the Ways and Means Committee. It was suggested that 40 resolutions by mid-April would do that. Fortunately, we achieved this goal, and Ways and Means considered but did not act on this bill. Hence, to further improve the odds this bill will not only be seriously considered but also favorably viewed, we must strive for as many additional resolutions as possible. Therefore, with this need in mind, and since Barnstable residents will appreciate this law, and since this law will likely save Barnstable money, and since reducing waste is critical to our future, tonight I respectfully request the Barnstable Town Council add their valued endorsement of paint stewardship by passing the supportive resolution before you. Thank you for your consideration of this request.
Questions for Mr. Irwin? Councilor Turkelson.
Mr. Irwin, thank you for the presentation. I'm curious why, after getting the appropriate number of people on board, what the Ways and Means Committee said when they would not consider the item. Did they give a reason?
The only thing we know is leadership, which is the speaker and the chair of the Ways and Means Committee did not feel that there was enough demand for this law. And more than that, I cannot tell you why they did not.
Thank you.
Disappointing.
Agreed.
Yes, Councilor Lupke.
Yeah, Mr. Irwin, I don't know, we have these quarterly collections here at our local transfer station. What happens to those items? I mean, would the process be different, the ultimate dispenses, where they go? I mean, would this program be similar? Can you tell us when we turn those in, where do they go?
Latex and oil-based at those events, or just oil-based?
I think they take anything and everything, but all paints.
Okay.
Oil-based.
I think you may use Clean Harbors as your company. And if that's the case, I believe that what Clean Harbors does is it just incinerates the oil-based paint. It doesn't use it as a co-fuel. So that's a little bit different, but not terribly. And with the latex, I'm not sure what Clean Harbors does with that. It's very possible that they would take the latex that's collected and feed it into a system to reblend the paint and sell it like as new, basically.
Any follow-up? No. Any other questions? Do you guys want more time to think about this before we do anything else? Yes? Council Neary says yes. Anybody else? All right. If we need you back, would you be willing to come?
Sure thing.
All righty. Thank you for your time this evening.
Thank you for entertaining the subject of paint stewardship.
And if you
have a good evening.
If you have any updates, please send them our way.
Will do.
Thank you.
Bye now.
Okay, so next we have Town Manager Communications. Unity Day is coming up on August 2nd. Is that on the Village Green? Yes. There was an update on beach operations. Anybody have any questions? Council Lucky.
Yeah, I have a question about the packing out your own trash. I know, Mr. Ellis, you got an email from someone, and I saw on social media the picture at the end of Long Beach with just kind of a mini mountain of trash. And when you responded to the constituent, you said there were a lot of moving pieces, which I agree there are. And I can say at my, Eugenia Fortes Beach, which is the only one in my precinct, we used to have trash there, trash collection, that is, and now we don't. And as a result, there's just all sorts of disgustingness in the parking lot. And there also are no porta potties or anything. I just wonder if you could talk through the logic. Are we sticking with this? Pack out what you bring in. I mean, some beaches we have, some beaches we don't. Because there were a ton of people that jumped on that social media with the trash that were very interested. Most of them said that the town can't do it because people dump their residential trash. So just maybe a little philosophy on, why certain beaches don't have that at all. I noticed Hathaway's Pond, I think, too, had the sign up.
It's a good question. Thank you, Mark Ells, Town Manager. And it varies because we have done everything from having nothing to having dumpster or barrels, et cetera, at locations. And what we try to do is look at what's most effective. Now, face value, you would think, well, let's have the town collect it and let's put out the right sort of containers so we can not have it on the ground or in places we don't want it. But unfortunately, what we found, and it definitely varies by location, that people use those containers differently at different locations. In some cases, the barrels fill up with household trash immediately, as soon as the barrel's dumped. In some cases, people take the barrels. Believe it or not, we found that on C Street. We used to have barrels, way more barrels. And in other locations, it's not to pick on that single location. So we've tried to balance it out. I think the important thing, you've heard it tonight almost in every discussion on every topic, but I mean, we're here to serve our public. So when you have a suggestion, share it with us and we'll listen. And if what we're doing isn't working, then we'll look at another way to do it. And if it requires a policy or a regulation or a budget impact, we'll identify it and we'll bring it in and hopefully secure what we need to try what might be better. Trash is a difficult one. I can tell you firsthand, I've lived where I've lived for 40 years. I walked two of our major beaches and a very heavily pedestrian-used roadway every day of the year for 40 years. And trash is a huge issue. Rain or shine, we're out there. We fill up bags because it needs to be done. And our lifeguards try their best to keep up with it, but their eyes need to be on the water. So, again, communicate with us. We're more than happy to relook at an area if it's not working and try to come up with a better way. So if the end of Long Beach Road is getting filled up, maybe it's something like putting a video camera up, catching whoever's doing it. And then, because the other thing is with household trash, many times when you tear it open, you'll find their mail. So, and we've done that. I mean, I actually ran solid waste for a long time, and now actually I think Structures does the collection with the packer. But so there's ways that we can pursue it and deter it. And again, public, share with us, and we'll do our best to relook at something that isn't working. Sometimes your eyes or a constituent's eyes are the best way to know where that's happening, okay? And so it's a great question. We'll look at the end of Long Beach Road and tell you whether we're going to hold with what's there, or do we modify it? And if we modify it, is it a seasonal modification? I can just tell you, because that's where I live, it's a year-round challenge. It really is.
No, I agree with you, Mark. I walk my dog every morning down in that area, rain or shine, every day of the year.
Yep.
And I always carry plastic bags, and I usually end up with 2 full.
Imagine,
every
so both
day.
of us are doing it.
Every
well, my
day.
wife too. And
Yeah.
and then it's still there.
And it's still there.
Yes.
Yeah, no, it's really a conundrum. And as I say, I've seen it go both ways. But Long Beach is a particularly long walk with those separate parking lots. That might be one to think about giving it another shot. I don't know how remote cameras could be.
We'll
to
look at
go
it,
out
and
there,
I'll
but-
talk with staff, and I'll talk with conservation, and I'll get back to you on what we recommend. And if you don't like it, then let me know, and we'll say, okay, well, maybe we can try something a little different here. Okay?
Councilor Turkelson.
Thank you, President Penn. I just have to say, as much as it drove me nuts when you took away my garbage can where I use my boat and I walk my dog, I guess I'm used to it now. But I also have to say how excellent, the My Barnstable app is, that you fill in the form and you send it away, and literally the town has been super responsive. And I sometimes think people just don't know who to ask or where to ask, and I don't think I'm any more special than anybody else who walks the beach and hits that app and says, Long Beach is a mess today, and please could you come and help us? So I want to commend the town that literally you're so responsive in the areas that I frequent, because there isn't an option anymore, and I'm just kind of resigned to that. And now I know I can just hit that in email and it's like lickety-split, so I appreciate that.
Well, thank you so much for saying that, and that's in my town manager communication too. If you don't have the My Barnstable app, please put it on your phone. It's free. And then you can go right down to report a problem. I had this on West Main Street the other day, and it was a business owner, and he had 2 complaints. And I said, I'm not going to do it for you. And he kind of looked at me like, well, yes, you are. You work for me. And I said, I'm going to ask you to do something. He put it on his phone. He went to report a problem. He reported a problem. And one problem was addressed within a week. The other one was within 2. And if it's not an emergency, know too that everybody's really busy. So if it's an emergency, let us know that. In fact, dial 911 if it's really an emergency. But you got to let us know in that communication, because we have kind of like programmed amounts of time to respond to more routine things. And so a 1 and a 2 week response is pretty good for a sign and a significant pothole. Those were the 2 issues. But he was shocked that somebody looked at this, and we said, yes. We look at this, we log it into systems, we track it. As we accumulate them, we may say to ourselves, wow, we're getting a lot of complaints about that road and potholes on that road. DPW is going to go out there and take an extra look at it and say, maybe we need to do a road repair project here, okay? Above and beyond what we're looking at with our pavement management system. So, thank you. Yep.
Free advertising, everybody loves it. Council Lucky.
One follow-up. Mark, is that the preferred method above a phone call? Is the My Barnstable app really your best? Is that the best? I mean, I know there's other options, but is that?
Well, I would hope that depending on who you call, that any staff, and I do use the word we a lot, but it's not meant to be anything more than it's not an I. What I do isn't an I. Across the board, it's always a we. I don't do it alone, whether it's council or staff, and that's why I use that. I try not to use I. But if it comes in, staff can use that to log in. It's funny, people will think, well, I talked to the town manager and that's why this pothole got patched. That is not the reason. I go on and I log it in sometimes with that. If I'm on my phone when they call me, if I'm at my desk, I'll send an email to, highway work order, or structures and grounds work order, or to inspectional services, because I know to do that, and our staff knows to do that. So they all should be the same, just about. But you can do it. Think about, you cut the middleman out here. You can go right, file the complaint, staff gets it, and staff knows where to direct it. Okay? Thank you.
All righty, thank you. I noticed on part of your report was an update by Planning and Development on the housing production plan, former Marston's Middle School, and local comprehensive plan. Is there anything you want to highlight from that, or no?
No, but I'm not sure if our interim director's here. And if he is, he's going to walk up behind me and he's going to give you a real quick summary in case there's any questions.
I just gave you an out in case you needed it, yeah.
Thank you. I appreciate it.
Keyword in that was quick.
Absolutely. Good evening, Jim Kupfer, Interim Director, Planning and Development. Yes, to summarize just quickly, we have a number of planning initiatives ongoing. Housing production plan is before our ad hoc subcommittee to look at our goals and strategies for the housing production plan. The first meeting was this evening, and hope to engage that subcommittee to provide some recommendations back to the planning board and town council. Marston's Mills former school site, we had a lot of great engagement in the spring. We have hired BSC Engineering, who was at those public meetings and has been working with staff to develop out concepts based on all the public feedback that has been provided, and we'll be back this fall to the council and to the public with concepts for consideration and further molding. And obviously, the local comprehensive plan is ongoing. The LCPC has been meeting often. The next meeting is July 25th, right here in this room at 5:30 p.m., where we'll be talking about culture, heritage, and design chapter. Was that quick enough?
That was very quick.
Excellent. Thank you.
You did good. Very good. Okay. Thank you all for that. Next item on the agenda is our minutes. Act on public session minutes of June 27th. I'll entertain a motion in a second.
I move to accept the minutes as presented.
There's a motion and a second. Is there any discussion, corrections, omissions? Nada? Seeing none, all those in favor? It's unanimous? No, you didn't vote. You abstained because you weren't here. Thank you. One abstention. Great. Okay, so this is what I'm calling item 7B. In accordance with Section 22G1 of Chapter 30A of the general laws, prior to tonight's town council meeting, I reviewed 3 sets of executive session minutes with the town clerk and the town attorney. And based upon that review, I am making the following announcement. I approve the executive session minutes of April 4th, 2024, June 6th of 2024, and June 13th, 2024, relating to the litigation strategy regarding Park City Wind's proposed offshore, renewable wind project in the town, and have authorized the release of said minutes with the redaction of the portions of the said minutes protected by attorney-client privilege, and for which continued non-disclosure is warranted. The votes taken in the executive session on April 4th, 2024, and June 13th, 2024, will be released. No votes were taken during the executive session on June 6th, 2024. Okay. Attorney Nober. Even with my bad eye, I got the.
Good evening, councilors. Karen Nober, Town Attorney. As you know, members of the Town Council have been advised by my office that the rules relating to attorney-client privilege limit what councilors can share about the substance of discussions they had with the town's attorneys about Park City Wind in executive session. But I understand that councilors are getting numerous requests for information regarding those discussions. So to try and address those requests, I can share the following. The members of the Town Council were advised as to the potentially binding nature and enforceability of the host community agreement, as well as the relative risks, costs, and likelihood of success associated with various courses of action, including litigation and further negotiations. The members of the Town Council also evaluated available legal options for seeking project route changes, mitigation measures, environmental impact reductions, and compensation. Each individual councilor ultimately weighed the legal advice regarding potential impacts of the project, the proposed benefits of the host community agreement and side agreement, and the potential risks and costs associated with repudiating the host community agreement. Based on their consideration of those factors, each councilor reached a decision and voted accordingly. And the Town Council's votes, as President Penn just said, will be made available to the public after this meeting. Thank you.
Do you want to do this? Yeah, go ahead. No?
Okay, as mentioned previously, there has been an open meeting law complaint made, and I would propose that the council delegates to the town attorney responsibility for responding to the open meeting law complaint submitted to the town council president and town clerk on July 2nd, 2024. Does that need to be in the form of a motion, Karen?
So moved.
That's the motion.
Okay.
Yep.
Second.
Karen Nober, discussion, please.
Thank you. Karen Ober. So you all received the open meeting law complaint that was filed with the council on July 2nd. The response is due in 14 business days unless you seek an extension from the Attorney General's office. The complaint alleged two things. It alleged that the notices for the executive sessions, two of the executive sessions, were not sufficient in terms of what the open meeting law required. And it alleged, the complaint alleged that the votes that were taken in executive session should not have been taken in executive session under the open meeting law. So you have the opportunity to respond to the complaint yourself. Typically, boards go into executive session when that happens. I feel like that may not be the best course of action at this point. Also, and probably more importantly, the issues that were raised here are legal issues. They're not factual issues about what happened. They are legal issues that are the subject of the complaint. So you have the option to delegate the handling of the response to me or my office, and we will respond accordingly on your behalf. Thank you.
Any discussion on the motion on my left? John? Councilor Crowe?
Thanks, Vice President Tamish. I want to speak a little bit about my concerns about the process here, and I'm going to make sure I don't say anything about that's untoward, about that shouldn't be out there. I think the process had a few issues, and I'd like to share some of the process concerns that I have on my mind. One is the urgency to vote on the spot was not made clear to all the councilors at the time. And I think it would have been better if we had a little time to think about it. I don't know what the urgency was. The second is a councilor from the village where the infrastructure will run through was not present. This is not to judge his absence in any way. I want that to be perfectly clear. My point in bringing it up is that I've wondered if he even knew there was be a vote that night, because it's not otherwise evident to most of us. Should we have a protocol about vote notices to the councilors to prevent that from happening? The third point is we didn't receive any background information for obvious reasons probably before this was going on. I'm not sure everyone felt that the councilors were properly prepared in advance of being asked the question to ask to vote, and in such a way that enabled a full understanding and equipped us to enter the session prepared to ask reasoned questions before we did vote. As none of us are lawyers here, I'd be first to say it's challenging to sit in a room full of lawyers and digest what they mean and react in actual time. I think that makes it really important that we get the process right. And as you've said, Attorney Nober, a lot of us are getting other questions from that and constantly getting questions about what happened during those meetings. And now we are presented today with a second open meeting request complaint, and it raised still more questions about a process. I would support asking the legal staff, our legal staff, to draft a reply, but I do not support handing it off to legal with no further discussion regarding that reply and the process. I believe it would be the right thing to do to come back and discuss legal's draft reply before sending it off to the recipients. I, for one, want to be comfortable with what it says on our behalf, and I think it has raised important process questions for us to discuss. Thank you.
I would say that some of the issues you're raising are not what the complaint actually alleges. The complaint alleges the notices were deficient and the votes were not properly taken in executive session. That's what the complaints are. If there are other issues that you think ought to be discussed with legal, we can certainly do that, but that's not what the response will address.
Thank you, I understand.
Any further discussion on my left? Any discussion on my right? Councilor Turkelson?
Thank you, Vice President Tamish. I'm just curious, I understand what you're saying, that John's points may not coincide with the open meeting law complaint, but along those lines, is there any reason why you couldn't, in the process of what you're doing, come back and notify us of what the response is, just so that, I guess, we're all in the loop and we understand what's going on? Because we are delegating the authority to you, so it'd be nice to know what kind of happens.
Yeah, I mean, I was planning to copy all of you when I provide the response, of course. It's not a secret response.
Okay, thank you.
Any further discussion?
Can I make a motion that we receive this prior to being sent out and we discuss this, Attorney Nober's response to this complaint?
The response is due on the 23rd unless we get an extension from the Attorney General's office, and I'd have to explain why we need that.
Yeah, I think that would be the issue, would be timeliness. How would we post a meeting to discuss it prior to it being sent out?
This is already a motion on the floor.
There's a motion on the floor. I understand you're returning my comment.
Okay. Okay, any further discussion on the original motion? Was yours an amendment, John?
Mine was an amendment.
Okay, would you?
Mine was an amendment to the motion that we have the legal staff, prior to sending off the reply to the filers of this open meeting process, allow the council a period of time to read it over and make comments within the council. I see that we don't have a meeting to do so, so I don't know if that's possible, but if there's any digital way to do that, maybe advise us on that.
You could individually respond to me, but you couldn't talk to each other outside of a meeting. And the next meeting's not until August 15th.
We need a second on that amendment.
Okay, is there a second to Councilor Crow's motion?
I have a comment prior to that. Wouldn't we have to have a move to file an extension with the Attorney General before we would do any of that? Wouldn't it be more appropriate to say you would move to file an extension rather than amend it and then create a bizarre process of sending it around?
Well, we have one amendment on the floor now, so we could
But you
not
see what I
accept-
mean? Wouldn't it be? Wouldn't that not be germane, that amendment that couldn't stand? Because we would have to vote to have an extension in order to be able to discuss in an open meeting any response or feedback to a response. That's what I'm trying to say.
And I just want to point out, the extension is a request. It's a request to the AG, to the Attorney General.
So it's not guaranteed.
No, I mean, you have to explain why you need extra time.
Okay.
I don't actually need extra time to prepare the response.
Okay. Any further discussion on Councilor Crow's amendment?
You have a member of the public that would like to speak. I don't know
Do we
what
do
you want
that?
to do with that.
Do we do that?
You can do that if you want.
Mr. Schulte?
It's up to you. Maybe he has experience.
Bob Schulte from Centerville. As a member of Barnstable Speaks, the organization that filed that complaint, I believe we'd be amenable to a request for an extension to allow the counselors to review that before it was sent. So if that's something that needs to be done from Barnstable Speaks to the Attorney General, again, I don't think there'd be any problem with getting the extension to give the counselors the appropriate amount of time to review the response.
Attorney Noper, is that appropriate?
I think that's up to you. I don't think it's necessary. There are two discrete legal issues that are alleged. I can respond to them. I would obviously share my response with the members of the council. I don't necessarily expect all of you to weigh in on the legal analysis, so I'm not really sure what the benefit of doing it that way would be, but that's certainly up to you.
Okay. Okay. No further discussion on the council? All those in favor of Councilor
Was there a
Crow's-
second? I'm sorry, I missed it.
There was a second.
There was a second?
Was there a second? Yeah, I believe there was a second.
Who did the second?
I'm sorry. Was there a second to Councilor Crow's amendment?
Second.
Okay.
It was an amendment.
The amendment to the original motion was that prior to the response being sent to the Attorney General's office, that it be provided to the town council. Is that correct, John?
Yes, for discussion.
For discussion at the August 15th meeting, that's the only way you can discuss it. And then we would go into executive session to do that.
I'm open for what the advice of the fellow councilors would say on that.
You would have to have a special meeting if you wanted to discuss it before August 15th.
I still say, wouldn't we have to direct the attorney to apply for an extension? Do you see what I'm saying? Why this doesn't, I don't feel that this makes sense?
Right. It would not be possible to have a meeting or to have any substantial amount of time to respond to this prior to the 25th, I believe you said?
It's the 23rd.
23rd,
That's the 14th.
which is next Tuesday.
We'll all be given the response. We'll all have the response. What Councilor Crow is saying is that we should have some time to respond to it. But we couldn't do that even if we had this amendment pass, because we would have to have instructed the attorney to file for an extension on our behalf, and then pending the Attorney General's response to that. That's all I'm trying to say. Do you see? We're all going to receive the text of this response. So when would we, I mean, we would have to, do we have to approve that response? We're trying to delegate to her to do the responding now. Do you see what I'm saying? I don't know, I belabor the point. We should just vote on it.
Councilor Turkelson, did you have a comment?
Councilor Crowe, is it that you're wanting to have open response here on the dais in public, or is it that you want to read the document before it is submitted? One or both? Just
One or both. I think being able to read it before it's sent and having to be able to comment on that prior to it's being sent.
And you would like that comment to be public versus just you responding directly to Attorney Nober in your capacity, in your views? I'm just trying to get a sense of if we just get it and we respond direct and kind versus calling a special meeting before the 23rd.
I passed to Seth for it.
All I'm saying, I'll just say it one more time, that we should, I think that the best way to do it, if you want to do it that way, would be to, why is the word escaping me? To rescind that motion.
Withdraw your motion.
And withdraw the motion and make a motion to, if that is what we want to do, to then instruct our attorney to apply for an extension with the Attorney General's office. And then that first. Do you see what I'm saying?
I do.
All right. The issue then, if I might, is that, as Attorney Noble said, that the Attorney General may or may not grant an extension. So we have to have a response prepared. Is that correct?
I would need to get, I would have to have a response if the extension request is denied. I'm just questioning the value of, and I don't know a better way to say this, the value of feedback from all of you on the legal analysis of the requirements of the open meeting law. But again, that's up to you.
Councilor Mendez?
Thank you, Vice President Tamish. We couldn't discuss it on the dais anyways because it's a legal strategy. It has to go into executive session.
Have to go into executive.
It doesn't, to be fair, it doesn't have to, but typically boards will go into executive session because it is a complaint. It is to discuss a complaint against the board, which is one of the reasons to go into executive session that's set out in the statute. You don't have to, but typically you would.
Councilor Crowe?
I'll rescind that amendment now, and we'll move on.
All right. Okay, so we go back to the original.
Can whoever seconded it rescind that?
Is there a second to rescind?
Second down there.
Second.
Rescinded. Well, whatever.
No.
All
All those in favor of rescinding Councilor Crowe's amendment?
I don't think.
Do we have to do that?
You don't need to. You don't
Okay,
need to
just a
vote.
second. All right.
Yep.
So, any further discussion on the main motion then? Okay. Would this be a voice vote? Oh, excuse me, Councilor Ledke.
Yeah, my question on the main motion, which might help Councilor Crowe, is can you not just, send it out, but could it be explained by you at the August meeting?
Sure.
Could we have a full explanation? And to me, it speaks to we're being thrust into so much legalese. And I agree with Councilor Crowe. I wish we had been advised that we were going to be voting at the executive session. I don't know if that could be done in the future. But I think we need to have a better understanding. And I think a thorough explanation of your answer would be helpful. So
Yeah.
maybe that would satisfy. It would give an opportunity for discussion at that point, John.
Thank you, Councilor Luckey. I would agree with what you just said.
I don't have any
Okay.
problem with that.
Any further discussion? Okay, all in favor of the motion to delegate to the town legal department the open meeting complaint, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Seeing none, the motion does pass.
Thank you.
Hallelujah. Nice job. You want to keep going?
Sure. Okay, the next item on the agenda is communications from elected official, boards, committee, and staff, commission reports, correspondence, and announcements. We have an update on the comprehensive wastewater management plan financing by Director of Finance, Mark Milne. If you could come forward.
Question?
Yes.
If we have announcements, are we doing that after the presentation?
Sure, we can do
Okay.
that.
You see, all right?
Good evening, everyone. Mark Milne, Director of Finance. I think the last time I was here before the board with a financial update on this program was February 1st, so it's been almost 6 months, a good time to review. A lot of things have changed in the past 6 months, all for the positive, and I'd like to review those with you this evening. To date, we've appropriated $275 million for the Comprehensive Wastewater Management Plan. That includes what you just passed for the fiscal year 2025 capital improvement program. This includes about $145 million in sewer expansion projects, $129 million for projects out at the water pollution control facility, and about $762,000 for non-traditional type projects. This is the schedule that you saw in your capital improvement plan for the next 5 years for projects associated with the Comprehensive Wastewater Management Plan. These figures have been inflated by 5% per year, taking into consideration some factor for inflation over the next 5 years. So it's about $30 million higher than what you saw in your capital improvement book. But I wanted to make sure that we exercise some conservatism in our financial projections. So we've inflated those figures by 5% a year. The numbers you see here in green, we intend on financing with loans through the Mass Clean Water Trust or general obligation bonds. And the numbers highlighted in blue are what we plan on paying out of our cash reserves to finance. And most of those are associated with design costs. So altogether, it's about $464 million over this 5-year period. Again, the $169 million has already been appropriated. 3 of these projects that are asterisked are included on the Department of Environmental Protection's intended use plan for 2024. That includes the nitrogen removal and headworks, Route 28 West Sewer Expansion, and the Finney's Lane Neighborhoods Sewer Expansion. All on the 2024 intended use plan, meaning that we're eligible to borrow from the Mass Clean Water Trust at low interest rates for those 3 projects. So financing those construction costs, we have 2 mechanisms. First is the Mass Clean Water Trust. In order for a project to be financed through the Mass Clean Water Trust, we have to get it included on DEP's intended use plan. If it's listed on their intended use plan, we are eligible for a subsidy from the Cape and Islands Water Protection Fund. In addition, we are a Tier 1 disadvantaged community designation, which provides us an additional 3.3% subsidy through that trust. We are also a housing choice community, which qualifies us for a 1.5% borrowing rate as opposed to the traditional 2% rate. And that's for up to 20 years, if we amortize the loan for up to 20 years. Interest rates are a little bit higher if we amortize them over 30 years, which we just did with the Strawberry Hill Road project, and we ended up paying 1.7% on the interest rate because of the longer amortization period. There's an annual financing cap through the trust for every community of $50 million, but that is subject to a waiver from DEP. They will loan more money to communities if they have the additional financial capacity to do so in any year. Oftentimes what happens is communities whose projects get listed, sometimes they don't go through with them, and that frees up funding that they can reallocate to other communities that are on that list. They also keep a little reserve aside every year as well. The second option, if we can't finance the construction through the Mass Clean Water Trust, is to issue a general obligation bond where we would package the CWMP construction costs along with all of our other approved capital projects and put it out to bid. And the last bid we just did in June resulted in a 3.7% borrowing rate on a 20-year amortization. And then future operating budgets will include the annual loan payments on these borrowings that are conducted either through the Mass Clean Water Trust or a general obligation bond. So the funding sources that we've created for this program that pay all these loans back. Rooms tax on traditional lodging, about just almost 1.1 million was generated in fiscal year 24. Meals tax, almost over 2.1 million in fiscal year 24. Tax on vacation rentals, or almost 2.5 million in FY24. In addition, we've committed ourselves 4.2 million in funding in FY25 from the general fund. We also have a commitment to grow that to 5.75 million by fiscal year 27. We have sewer assessments. We'll begin collecting those in fiscal year 25. We've already sent out our first estimated sewer assessments on the Strawberry Hill Road project. Final assessments will be coming forward in the near future. And then once people start connecting to the system, we will have additional user charge revenue from those new customers. And some of that user charge revenue will be allocated to expanding the system, and some of it will be allocated to operating the collection, treatment, and existing disposal systems. We also have investment earnings on our cash deposits that go towards this program. And we have the Cape and Islands Water Protection Fund subsidies, which will now be an annual revenue source to us as opposed to a principal subsidy based on recent action that they've voted and the way they distribute the subsidies to communities. We also have a potential new source of the $16 million Park City Wind payment becomes realized at the time of that project's financial close. If that payment does materialize, then it could be allocated to this program. But it's a potential new source. So we've built a model, and in that model we have several assumptions that you see here, and that model allows us to adjust these assumptions so you can see what the financial impact on this program is at any point in time. And the objective of this model is to make sure that we have enough available resources at the end of any fiscal year to cover the subsequent year's commitments. And if you adjust these assumptions where that doesn't happen, that means you've got to play around with it until you can get it into a positive situation. So right now, we have a positive cash flow for the next 5 years using these assumptions that you see here. An investment rate of return of 2.5%, increase in our traditional lodging tax of 1.25%, an increase in our meals tax annually of 4.5%, and vacation rentals of 3.5%. These are all a little bit conservative based on a historical actual growth that we've seen in these three categories. Again, trying to build some conservatism into this model. We also need to continue to grow that general fund contribution, but just a little bit, $100,000 a year until fiscal year 32 when we can stop. So that gets us up to about 6.15 million as opposed to 5.75 million. We've built in annual increases for salaries and wages, health insurance, retirement costs associated with the staff that manages the implementation of this program. We're using a general obligation bond rate of 3.7%, which we just received in our latest bid. We're also using that 1.7% interest rate on any borrowings through the Mass Clean Water Trust. Again, 5% inflation rate for construction costs built in here. Annual sewer utility rate increase estimated at 5%. About 50% of that new sewer utility revenue is allocated to expanding the system, with the other 50% being allocated to the collection, treatment, and disposal of the sewage. We're using an average of 15 years to collect the sewer assessments. We really don't know. We don't have any historical reference here for sewer assessment collection, but in reality, what will probably happen is some people will pay them in full up front when they're billed, and others will decide to amortize them anywhere from 5 years to 30 years. So we're just using an estimate of 15 years for now. And the Cape and Islands Water Protection Fund subsidies will be 25% as they voted they have the funding capacity to provide this level of subsidy for the next several years based on their revenue estimates. And so we've built that into our model. And again, that Park City Wind contribution is currently set at $16 million. That's another assumption that you could play with to see where the model goes. So these are the significant changes to the assumptions since I was here in February. We increased that Cape and Islands Water Protection Fund subsidy rate from 12% to 25% based on the action that they took, which was positive news for us. We decreased our borrowing rate from the Mass Clean Water Trust from 1.9 to 1.7. We weren't sure what we were going to get on that 30-year borrowing, but the trust came through to us, for us, and they provided us a 1.7% interest rate on that 30-year borrowing, and we anticipate that will be repeated going forward. We also reduced our borrowing assumptions from 4% to 3.7% on the general obligation bonds, and we increased our meals and rooms tax growth rates from 1.25% to a range of 1.5 to 4.5, again, based on our historical actual revenue growth that has occurred over the past several years. We're also assuming more projects are going to be financed through the Mass Clean Water Trust. Before, we weren't assuming as many projects to be financed through the trust, but the trust, we met with trust officials, the treasurer and I, and they provided us in relative strong confidence that they'd be able to provide us more funding than that $50 million a year if we need it. It's going to be interesting to see if we can spend $50 million a year, honestly. But some of our projects are very large, and we could have a year where we do exceed $50 million. And they said they would work with us to find us the additional funding to allow us to borrow that from them. And again, that Park City Wind payment could be dedicated to this program. So using all those assumptions I laid out, this is what the annual available resources look like compared to the subsequent year's commitments. And again, the important factor here is making sure that that blue line exceeds that orange line every single year, and it does with these assumptions. And this includes financing all 5 years, fiscal year 25 through fiscal year 29, without a debt exclusion. This is using these resources, using these financing options, and with those changes in the assumptions that I just showed you, it creates this positive cash flow situation. This is what our outstanding debt and our annual loan payments will look like if all of this financing takes place. You can see our outstanding principal for this program grows to over $400 million eventually in the next 10 years because we're borrowing a lot of money through the trust, right? And you can see our annual loan payments start to peak at $20 million a year by fiscal year 36. And then they start gradually going down until they expire. This just represents the next 5 years, okay? 25 through 29. Fiscal year 30 and beyond is another whole challenge that we'll address next year when that new number gets added to this program. We'll update all of this. If something happens with these assumptions, right, a lot of things have to go right for us, but if something does happen with these assumptions that negatively impact us, there are potential additional resources. The Municipal Empowerment Act is still being discussed at the state level, has not passed yet, but I reviewed this at the February meeting. These would all require local town council action if this does get passed, and it includes increases in meals taxes, rooms taxes, and a surcharge on motor vehicle excise tax. All of those could fund a $30 million in additional borrowing. There's still the Water Infrastructure Investment Fund opportunity, which requires a ballot question that we've never taken to the voters yet. But that is an option. Again, debt exclusion override is also an option. Again, none of these are necessary right now for this next 5-year period, but there are additional resources in the event that we may need them. So to recap, if all these updated assumptions hold true, all the projects listed in the capital plan for 25 through 29 can be provided for with existing resources. No debt exclusion will be needed to finance these projects. If the current assumptions are negatively impacted, we have those additional resource options that I just illustrated to you in the previous slide. And finally, my recommendation would be to take that financial model that we developed with your approval and provide it to CFAC and have them review it and come back with a report on that and perhaps their opinion as to what any changes to those assumptions that they would think would be prudent to make. So that concludes my presentation.
Thank you, Mark. As always, great job. Any questions or discussion on my left? Questions, Councilor Ledke?
This is an example exactly why we have you on our agenda later. You exude such professionalism, such competence. You do things just in such a spectacular way, Mark Milne. An amazing resource, and I applaud you. I do have one question. You have the 16 million, then you use the word could. And we've heard that the Avangrid is providing paving. Is that in your list of sources or not?
It is not.
Okay. That's what I wanted to make sure that that's been parsed out.
Yes.
Okay. Thank you very much. A beautiful job.
Thank you.
Councilor Turkelson?
Thank you, Director Milne, for that presentation. A question along Betty's lines. The slide read the project's financial close, that the 16 million will happen at the project's financial close. What does that mean exactly, the financial close?
That's, I believe, is when they get their financing. Avangrid gets the financing for their project.
And we have no idea when that will be, correct?
That's right. I don't know what the date will be, but I assume it could be fiscal year 27, fiscal year 26, or fiscal year 27.
Okay, just because I know in other areas they say we're commissioning it, we're not quite there, and there's been kind of a conversation about what do all those words mean, so I just wanted to get what financial close meant. It could have been once it's fully commissioned, and God only knows how many years that'll take when blades are falling off of wind towers. And then my other question was, when you recommend that CFAC look at the information that you've given them, will the CFAC come back and present their results to us, or will you be bringing those results to us?
I'll leave that up to the council.
I would like to have CFAC present to us. That's my personal recommendation. Thank you.
Any other? Councilor Schnapp?
Thank you, Vice President Temish, and thank you, Mark. Great presentation and great news. I mean, I don't think we were expecting this information at this date, but it sounds like all those different factors have really worked well in our favor. We've talked on this council about flow neutral being another source of reducing the interest rate on the Clean Water Trust money. So will CFAC be looking at all those assumptions and toggling with them, or do we need to ask that specifically that they look at that?
Yes, so two things. First of all, I do not have that built into this financial model, the flow neutral that is, because that's a land use policy, so I don't think that's in CFAC's field of expertise as to how to manage a flow neutral land use policy. They can certainly, we can easily illustrate what the financial impact is if we were to get 0% loans through the trust. This model will show you what that will do.
Right. I would like to request that we get that. I mean, I know that CFAC does not make those recommendations, and I think the council needs to make that specific request for us to look at that. But I'd like to just see what the implications are if we did reach flow neutral.
Financially?
Yeah.
Oh, that's easy to do.
Yeah,
That's easy, yeah.
I know how you can toggle the rates,
you've
but just for the full council's benefit, that would be great. And then the second question is totally out of the ballpark from CWMP is, do you have any sense that there might be a debt exclusion need coming from any other part of our town in the next 5 years?
Certainly, the school department has undertaken a study of their facilities, and there has been a report provided to the school committee, and I think it illustrates over $200 million of needs and for school facilities, but that's over an extended period of time. I believe they have a subcommittee, a facility subcommittee right now, meeting on a regular basis. And eventually, I would anticipate that they may come forward with a large dollar request, which may require a debt exclusion override, but have not been asked yet.
Thank you.
Any other discussion? Thank you, Mark.
Thank you.
Okay, any other comments, announcements by council members? Councilor Schnapp.
Thank you again. I just wanted to announce that on Saturday, July 20th, coming right up, from 10 a.m. to 3 p.m., there is going to be the first, I don't know if it's going to be an annual event, but the first Pond Appreciation Day at Hamlin Pond, and this is being sponsored by the Indian Ponds Association, which covers 3 of our ponds, Mystic Lake, Hamlin Pond, and Middle Pond, most Merson's Wills. And it's a community event for the whole family to celebrate the beautiful ponds of Merson's Mills, to learn about the 3 Indian ponds, and about the pond research being done by Friends of Long Pond. There will be a bog restoration walk, cavorting with freshwater mussels, and learning about pond turtles and turtle nesting games. So again, it's open to the entire community. Hamlin Pond Beach is a town beach, and from 10 to 3. Hope you can come. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other?
I just like that because it's IPA, Indian Pond Association. Just kidding. Just so you know, I was listening. I would like to announce an appointment, if I might, because it says I can announce something here. This is to announce an appointment to the Zoning Ad Hoc Committee. I had a big discussion with Councilor Mendez, who's the chair of the Appointments Committee, and he was totally in favor of the announcement of Seth Etienne, I hope I said his name correctly, to be appointed. The reason I'm appointing him now is because the first meeting was coming up, and I didn't want to wait till the August meeting or a first read and a second read and whatever. He was going to miss the first meeting of the ad hoc committee. So I'm announcing the appointment as of today.
Thank you. Does that need to be confirmed?
No.
Anybody else? That's okay. Councilor Crowe?
I'll be quick. This Saturday, July 20th, is the 50th annual Ossiville Village Day. That is sponsored by both the Ossiville Business and Professional Association and the OVA, which I was involved with in the past. I will say that that this is basically run by the OPPA and has been for years, and I don't know how long Gail Nightingale has been running it, but at least as long as I've been here for 26 years, and she does a fabulous job. There's a 5K at 8 in the morning. Most of the other programming starts at 10, and there's a parade at 1. It's a great event, and hope people have the chance to come.
Thank you. Any other announcements? Okay, before we turn it over.
If I could, Karen Nober, Town Attorney. I believe the appointments of the residents are to come from the Appointments Committee and then subject to vote by the council. That was the amendment, the big amendment that we spent a lot of time on. So I'm just not sure that you actually can do that, Madam President.
Well, that's why I consulted with the chair of the Appointments Committee to see if he was good with that.
But that's not the actual process.
What do you say?
We'll hold a meeting Monday. That gives you the 48 hours to post it.
Okay.
Yes, I was going to say something different. I could meet. I was going to say, could I move to recommend this person for the spot on the committee and then suspend the rules and vote on it now? Would it be not properly noticed?
Well, I think You need a recommendation from the Appointments Committee, and I don't know if you have that. Well, that's not a town council rule. I mean,
Well, Council Burdick is on the Appointments Committee, as is Council Mendez. Who else? Council Turkelson. Council Clark.
Could we do it when we have an admission?
I'm sorry, you would have to have an Appointments Committee meeting. You can't have that right now.
Yeah, you have to post it.
I mean, the town council suspends rules for what the town council does, but you're trying to suspend a rule for what the Appointments Committee does, and it doesn't work that way.
Attorney Nober.
Yes.
Excuse me. Why don't we have this gentleman attend the meeting? Anybody can attend the meeting. Why don't we have him attend the meeting, and we'll vote him in the next appointments committee.
I think that's fine. He shouldn't, obviously, he shouldn't vote, and he should be there as a member of the public with the same participation as a member of the public, but he can certainly attend as any other member of the public could.
Was this gentleman on the original list of candidates for the, okay, that sounds reasonable.
Sounds like
I
a
think
plan.
we all, all of us like the guy.
I don't think this is an appropriate time to be discussing whether we like him or not. The Appointments Committee was set up to do appointments. We spent a lot of time arguing that the president wouldn't have the purview to do what she's now doing. And it put a lot of work on the Appointments Committee, and I think it's kind of usurping the whole process that we argued for. And I don't agree with appointing him as we're doing. I think we should follow the procedure we set in place. And if Mr. Etienne really wants to be on this committee, he'll show up to the meeting and participate as a public member until such time as he's placed on the committee. And all those meetings should be recorded. He can watch it and participate.
Thank you.
Yeah, I think that's the way it needs to work.
Councilor Clark?
Thank you very much, Vice. Perhaps we can amend. Sorry. Perhaps we can amend the Appointments Committee agenda, and because it's already posted, and just include them in the discussion of our upcoming meeting next week.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know
Within
when your
48
meeting
hours.
is, but, we could take a look at that. It just should go through the committee.
Yeah, it's next week.
And on top of that, it should be an actual vote of whether we want him or somebody else. I think, again, we need to have the whole process go through as, in case there's somebody else that somebody on the committee might want to be nominating and voting for.
So President Penn, we're negating your announcement. Okay.
Okay.
Won't be the first time, it's fine.
All right. Okay. Anything else under discussion and correspondence? Vote on a vote?
We don't need a vote.
No. Okay. Yeah. Okay, it is now 8:21. We're going to take a short break. Why don't we be back in 10 minutes? Thank you.
screens here and everything, no?
I hope to see you. Thanks for coming.
Forgot what you were doing?
Janet.
I'll let you right there. I'll leave that right there.
Okay, if counselors are ready to go, we will start with the old business, the orders of the day. Counselor Burdick,
That's me.
could you do 24-235, please, for the...
Absolutely. Let me get to the page.
Page 30, I believe.
24-235, right? Old business. This is a public hearing, or to initiate a public hearing for Article 24, or 2024-235, appropriation and transfer order in the amount of $250,000 in community preservation funds for the purpose of acquiring a conservation restriction on a 5.84 acre open space parcel located at 4609 Falmouth Road, Katuitt, and shown in Assessor's Map 024, Parcel 042.
Second.
Do I ever hear a second? Second? Okay. I'd like to make a motion to open the public hearing.
So moved?
So moved. Do I have a
Second.
second to open the public hearing? Okay.
Second.
Public hearing is opened, and I would like to recognize Mr. Counsel from the Community Preservation Committee.
Thank you, Vice President Tamish. I'll be speaking on the acquisition of 4609 Falmouth Road, but I wanted to note before I begin my brief background on this, that this is also going to be accompanied by the approval of the conservation restriction, which this is a first for the council in a long time of wanting to present the acquisition and the conservation restriction on the same evening. So Town Attorney Noble will be speaking to the conservation restriction, and then Janet Milkman will do her presentation. The Barnstable Land Trust BLT is seeking approval from the Town Council upon recommendation of the Town Manager for community preservation open space funds in the amount of $250,000 for the acquisition of a conservation restriction, or CR, by the Town of Barnstable from the Barnstable Land Trust, Inc. on 5.84 acres plus or minus of open space located at 4609 Falmouth Road, Katuitt, Barnstable, shown as Assessor's Map 024, Parcel 042. The Katuitt Water District, acting through its Board of Water Commissioners, will co-hold the CR. At the May 20th, 2024 Community Preservation Committee meeting, the 7 committee members present voted unanimously to recommend to the Town Council, through the Town Manager, BLT's request in community preservation, open space, and recreation funds for the acquisition of the 5.84 acre parcel. The total purchase price of the parcel is $590,000. An application will be made to the EEA for a conservation partnership grant for $300,000 to be submitted in July 2024. $50,000 have been approved by the Katuitt Fire District, acting through its Board of Water Commissioners in support of the project. The parcel has frontage on Falmouth Road and abuts a BLT 5.9 acre conservation area to the south. Public access would be off Santuit Newtown Road. The Town of Barnstable would be granted a conservation restriction on the property, and the property would be managed by the BLT. This acquisition would create almost 12 acres of contiguous open space, conserving high-value natural resources and recreation access, as well as protecting nearby drinking water wells within a water protection zone, or Zone 2. Thank you.
Thank you. Any further participants who'd like to address the Attorney Nober?
Thank you. Karen Nober, Town Attorney. I'm actually not going to speak to the conservation restriction. I just have a corrective amendment. I'm going to ask for a motion to amend the language of the vote and the CR to switch the primary grantee and the secondary grantee. Right now, the primary is the town, the secondary is the Katuitt Water District. So I'm asking for an amendment to switch that. The reason for that is it's DEP policy that when a conservation restriction is used for water supply land and there are joint holders of the CR, they want the primary to be a water district. So that's the motion I would ask for, is to amend this item to switch the primary and the secondary.
Okay.
I would so move.
Second? All those in favor of the amendment to switch the town and the Katuitt Fire District? All opposed? Unanimous, it passes.
Thank you.
I'd like to recognize Janet Milkman of the Barnstable Land Trust.
Good evening, Janet Milkman, Executive Director of the Barnstable Land Trust. Just want to show you some nice pictures of this wonderful little property. This is, as Lindsay said, just about 6 acres in Katuitt, between, if you know, the Villaggio restaurant and the Capizzi Home Improvement on Santuit Newtown Road. If you go to the next slide, oh, can I go to the next slide? There we go. The project is outlined in red. The purple below it is a property that BLT owns now. And so we'll be able to, once we purchase this property, have a nice public access trail that goes through the whole 12 acres for the neighborhood. It also has a vernal pool on it, so it's rare species habitat, and probably most importantly is in Zone 2 for water quality protection, so really important for that. And if you go to the next slide, this is just a pretty picture of, oh.
You have to go.
Sorry, I'm used to having control here. Lots of beautiful beech trees and just a really pretty property for public access. So thank you for your time, and I hope you will support it.
Thank you. Anyone else care to address the public comment, or are there any questions for Ms. Milkman? Councilor Turkelson.
Thank you, Vice President Tamish. Thank you, Janet, for coming tonight. I saw on the map the proposed parking area. Is there already parking? Are we going to need to create parking? What will that look like? Who will fund that?
There's not a parking area there. We'll probably just put a little pull-off on Santuit Newtown Road. There's a electric, what do you call it?
Substation?
Substation right there. And so there's some, and there's an old, there's a road that's actually used by Capizzi that comes out to Santuit Newtown. It's an ancient way, or not a paved road, but there's a nice little area there for a pull-off. Yeah.
Any further discussion? Seeing no further discussion, do I have a motion to close the public hearing? Second? All in favor of closing the public hearing? Seeing appears to be unanimous. Okay. Council discussion on the motion. Any council discussion? On my right? No? On my left? No? Okay. So we will go to a vote. All those in favor of 2024-235? Roll call vote? Okay, I'm sorry. As amended. Madam Town Clerk? Assistant Town Clerk. Excuse me. Excuse me. I'm new at this.
Councilors: Bloom,
Yes.
Burdick,
Yes.
Clark,
Yes.
Crow,
Yes.
Levesque,
Yes.
Ludke,
Yes.
Mendes,
Yes.
Neary,
Yes.
Penn,
Yes.
Schnapp. Yes. Tamish,
Yes.
Turkelson.
Yes.
12 yes. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. Okay, next, item 2024-236. Councilor Ledke, would you mind reading that in?
Okay, thank you. This is old business. It may be acted upon by a majority vote. 2024-236, order authorizing the town manager to enter into and execute on behalf of the town an amendment to the employment contract between the town and Mark A. Milne.
Second.
I recognize Mr. Els.
Thank you, Mark Els, Town Manager. Thank you for allowing me to bring forward this order, authorizing me to enter into an amendment to our finance director's contract. Many of you are new, so I don't know whether you knew that Town Council authorizes our finance director's, authorizes the manager to enter into a contract with the finance director. So we have a current contract that expires at the end of June 26. And Mark Milne has shared with, and he's here in case you have detailed questions, but Mark Milne had shared with all of you an email describing why he and I entered into a discussion about his contract. And within that discussion, we began to discuss, and I was reflecting on what occurred during COVID, which was that Mark served our community for multiple years remotely. And Mark had suggested and asked whether, I would grant his ability, remote status, to be able to continue working for the town. As those discussions evolved, we more formalized it through an amendment to his existing contract. So there are basically, so otherwise, his contract with the town remains the same, except for three sections of amendment. And the first is that we extend his term of the contract a year, from June 30th, 26 to June 30th, 27. Second, that within the contract, it states that he can work remotely. And then third, it lays out that if we decide that because he's remote, it's not related to whether there's cause for some other reason. It's related specifically, we're saying he can work remote. If we decide that doesn't work, then we will pay him through the end of that fiscal year within which we decide that, through these 3 years. And we'll do that as per what it states in that amendment. So that's basically the modification. Now, it's important that you know that right now we have people that work remotely, that it's a portion of their job, and it's part of their work environment. So we already have that on the books, and we've had that since COVID. But it was important to Director Milne that we more formally do this. This is a critical position for our community, and I felt as though I could support what he was asking for, and I was glad that he would consider what we were offering. So I'll try to answer any questions you have. He is here if you would like to ask any other questions specific to his contract or otherwise.
Thank you. Any questions or discussion on my right? Councilor Ledke.
Yeah, I was curious where the 6-month clause came from. Do we have that for other employees, or that is just for this special circumstance because maybe there wasn't, it's being extra fair? Is that what we're saying, that we went into this? Why the 6 month of payment if it shouldn't work? I'm just wondering about that.
Because we want to give adequate time for him to be able, he's offering to do it. If we decide we don't want him to be remote anymore, we're giving him adequate time to find another opportunity.
Okay, but no other employee has 6 months' notice?
No.
Okay, so it's just the uniqueness.
The only people with contracts are the town manager, the finance director, the airport manager that's issued by the airport commission, and the school superintendent that's issued by the school committee. So, and so these two would fall, the town managers would fall directly under town council, and the finance director, with your approval, falls under the town manager. So otherwise, all employees are either in a union, the majority are, collective bargaining unit, or we have non-affiliateds as well. But none of them have that same condition.
Okay. No, I'm very supportive of this. As I said earlier, I think he's a tremendous resource and an asset. And I also applaud this because I think it speaks to the technology that we have available to us today to be able to do this remotely. And, you know, I did support even, you know, the town council having remote participation for councilors, you know, that we have such, you know, abundant technology to do these things that I think this is a welcome maybe experiment. You said we have others working remotely, but this is a little bit different, I think, than the others that you have, where he's going to be out of state and that kind of thing. So it's different, but I admire it, and I think it's something important to do, especially with everything we have going on with the sewer project and things like that.
Any further discussion on my right? On my left, President Penn.
Yeah, I'd just like to know if anybody would be interested in considering an amendment that this go through FY 2030 versus 2027.
I think we should have
Or 2040, perhaps.
I think we should have Director Milne up here as I've talked the terms of the contract with him, and I wouldn't want to. I think he gets it, though. Thank you for stating that. But I don't want to say no, though. I mean, that would be something that Mark would have to entertain.
Director Milne, do you have a comment? Or
Yeah, he's got one, but he doesn't want to say it.
any other comment on my left? Seeing no further comments, this is a majority vote. So all in favor of the motion as made, please signify by saying aye. Aye. All opposed? Seeing none, it passes.
Thank
you, Mark.
Thank you very much.
Okay. Next item is 24-237. Councilor Neary, would you do this one, please? Page 32.
My pleasure, Vice President Tamish. Okay. This is old business requiring a public hearing and a roll call majority full council vote. It's item number 2024-237. It's an appropriation order in the amount of $37,000 for the purpose of funding the town's share of the cost related to the installation of up to 37 electric vehicle charging stations in public parking lots in and around the village of Hyannis, as written.
Second.
Okay, do I have a motion to open the public hearing?
Second.
All right. All in favor of opening the public hearing? All right. Passes. I would recognize David Anthony, present the rationale.
Good evening, councilors. Pleasure to be here with you this evening. This represents the culmination of a 4 to 5 year effort to upgrade our existing electric vehicle charging stations. The story of this goes back to 2013 when we originally received our 3 federally funded charging stations that were installed. They had run into a series of situations. The technology was slow, obsolete, and working with our Infrastructure and Energy Committee prior to COVID, we had started to identify the need to meet the public's request for more of these potential charging stations. Anecdotally, there's between 3 and 4 million electric vehicles on the roads today, with increases every single year in the number that are being sold. So what we have as a destination are people who come down to hotels, who come down and stay at bed and breakfasts, who stay at Airbnbs, and they don't always have the infrastructure. They have the vehicles, which they can charge at home, but they bring them here and they are asking and requesting, expecting that the town will have these electric vehicle chargers. We have been able to leverage an infrastructure grant from the state for about $250,000. We've been able to leverage a $15,000 grant for 3 charging stations that would be at the Armory specifically for our fleet of growing electric vehicles. Those would not be available to the public, but would charge our vehicles. And all of this is with an infrastructure grant that came from Eversource as part of federal money and part of their commitment to upgrade what infrastructure they bring. 37 chargers essentially means that you can charge 74 vehicles. These are located at the 8 major municipal lots in and around Hyannis. These were, the identification of this was in talking with staff and taking a look at the availability of electric drops. Much of where these are going to be placed are not really discretionary. They're near power poles, and Eversource controls some of that. In many of the cases, the cars may be out on the edges, not close to the stores, so they're not always in the prime parking spots, but sometimes they're in corners. One of the other things that we're looking into is trying to meet the growing result of more apartments in and around Hyannis. Many times those apartment buildings don't have the infrastructure to allow people to charge the way someone would at home. If you were to buy an electric vehicle, you can install a charger in your garage and you can charge your own car overnight. Apartment buildings don't always have that ability, and people who come and rent who have an electric vehicle are kind of out of luck. By putting these into the municipal lots, they would have the ability to then park their cars there under special provisions and then would be able to plug in those cars. One of the big questions that comes up is, how does the town collect the cost for these electric charges? It is actually a town manager approved fee. We have set the fee extremely low. It would actually put us below the average on Cape Cod for public chargers. It is designed to help encourage people to find these chargers, which they do through apps on their phones. They would park there, they would charge. There is a $1 fee that is to a third-party software company, and then they would pay 25 cents a kilowatt hour, which is set slightly above what the all-in cost is that the town pays, so that we can capture a fractional cost of a penny that would accumulate, so that over time, if we had repairs or maintenance or something along those lines, we could. We do have the ability to request through the town manager fee hearings, if we find that the fee that we are collecting is not enough, we could then go back in and amend that fee and then charge that across the board. We are seeing more and more electric vehicles in and around Hyannis. Sean and I are both very much aware of people who are at our current chargers. We find that the 6 ports that we have are being used very heavily, and there is a growing need as more and more electric vehicles come into town. The advantage to having them where they are, it also means that while you are charging, you have a couple of hours to kill. So you walk to Puritan, or you go to Tap City Grill, or you walk up and down Hyannis Main Street. It's not really a direct economic development initiative, but it is certainly that's something that supports bringing people here. They stay for a period of time, and hopefully they take advantage of some of the businesses that we have. The $37,000 is the town's contribution essentially to $1.5 million worth of leveraged investment into our community.
Very good, thank you. Any questions for Mr. Anthony? Am I right? Councilor Ledke.
Yeah, you mentioned the apartment buildings, and we've had a lot of discussions about, 1 parking space per apartment now. So let's say I'm in one of these apartments, and I want to have 2 cars, or I do have 2 cars, and one's electric. How long can I stay in one of these spots?
So we do have parking restrictions in our parking lots, typically for 6-hour parking. Many of the parking lots also have no overnight parking. However, we do issue special permits to those people who come to us, and those permits are hang tags that would be in the cars. So someone who did choose to park an electric vehicle overnight wouldn't be towed. We do have to be careful how many times we allow. I mean, if you've got 250 parking spaces, you don't want to have 1,000 permits. That's simply going to be a little chaotic to try to manage. But as these come online, we do have to allow for the fact that overnight charging is almost the preferred way that people with electric vehicles want to do that. We have an opportunity to test this out with one of the apartment buildings right on North Street that through the planning board has been granted permission to maximize the site to allow for some parking across the street in our North Street West parking lot. So we will take advantage of that and monitor that to make sure that we, working with Peter Bertling and our parking division, we make sure that we monitor that.
No, I think this is great. I'd love to see our lots used overnight. I mean, this is the whole beauty of, the theory of having residences in a business district is at night, those residents can use these parking spaces, and then during the day they're away. So I love that you're doing this, and you're having some overnight parking, and I wasn't aware that you're doing this experiment on North Street, but I think this is hugely positive because it could help us with, some of the issues we've had with, the parking with these new apartments. And it would also encourage folks to get electric vehicles. So absolutely, I think it's a great idea.
Thank you.
Councilor Turkelson, did you have a? I'm sorry, Councilor Schnepp?
I had the same question, so thank you.
Okay. Councilor Turkelson.
A couple questions. Is there, in other communities, is there, I know like when I went sailing and you wanted to pull up to port, there was an app and you basically booked your spot. Mm-hmm. Is there an app where residents could book their spot so that if we have only X amount of chargers and we have more cars than we have chargers, is there a way for people to kind of reserve the app? Like, I need to charge my car on Monday, it's not available. Those kinds of things. I don't know if people have developed that technology with the same concept being it's like booking a hotel because I know I'm going to be there and I need that service.
I think that's an interesting wrinkle to this. We have not run into that yet. I think the practical reality here is we're going to go from 6 slots, 2 at the high school, 2 right here at Town Hall, and then I'm blanking as to where the other 2 are. The North Street West, kind of behind Toomey or behind Tap City Grill in that area. By adding in all of these, and Eversource, in order to bring in essentially free to us, this infrastructure is saying you need to put in a bank of electric vehicle chargers to make it worthwhile for them to do the investment, which makes perfect sense. So we're leveraging that. We're going to go from 2 to 10 slots. And I think what we're going to wind up seeing initially is 2 or 3 cars parked there until the electric vehicle community starts to catch on that we've got more of these. And then over the years, you will see more and more use. It may very well be that we reach that point and that kind of an app is necessary. I don't know of one specifically at the present time. It really is kind of first come, first served. Although I have seen that electric vehicle users are very sensitive to the fact that if somebody else is waiting, they communicate with each other. I'm not sure how, but sometimes it might be a note on the car that says, hey, when you're done, let me know, give me a call, and then I can come in. So we have seen a couple of events. The Suffolk program, for example, that was here, we had 3 people who had electric vehicles, and they would bring them down, and we only had the 2 slots, so they would trade off at lunch. Seems to be kind of a nice community. They look out for each other that way.
Okay, I know my exit strategy out of town council. I'll be developing that app and I'll be retiring early. And then my other question is, I know that you said that you and Sean are monitoring our current stations. Is there actually a program in the charging stations that you can digitally kind of be monitoring? Obviously you're not like staring at them and you're not looking out the window. Is there a way to be monitoring how long they're being used, how long people are parking? that kind
Absolutely.
of information?
Absolutely,
Because that's
there
going
is.
on the app.
It's on Sean's desktop, and at any given time, he can check and see what the status of those chargers are, whether they're operational, whether they're broken, whether they're being used, and what the duration of those stays are. So as we expand that, we would be able to take advantage of all of that. One of the issues that we had with the grant with the state was to try to make sure that all of our equipment stays consistent so that we don't have multiple vendors. And we've had a couple of blips along the way where vendors, either software vendors or equipment vendors, have gone bankrupt. And we wanted to make sure that we got in with the right company that was on state contract. And he's also working with the other towns on the Cape to develop a regional maintenance program so that we can contract as a region to make sure that they troubleshoot. The hard part is when you have a broken charger, it might take 3 or 4 days to get somebody down, but if we've got a regional response, then we can get quicker response to those fixes.
And can residents see where an open charging station is that's able to be plugged into, or is that just something that Sean can see?
Sean can see it, but there are a number of different apps that you can get that if you get an electric vehicle, it'll tell you where the charging stations are. So there are public charging stations at Whole Foods or at Kohl's or at other places, and you can actually see what they're charging. So in many ways, you can shop around. And I think that the fact that we're going to have kind of a low entry price in order to have people come in, we'll have to just take a look at the fees on an annual basis and make sure. But what we want to do is try to drive people in to develop an understanding as to where they are so that then they can take advantage of that. And then we'll see how that takes us. But third-party apps have already taken care of the idea.
Any further comment on my left? Okay. This is a public hearing. Any comment from the public? No? Seeing none? Do I have a motion to close the public hearing? Second? All in favor of closing the public hearing? All right. Any discussion on the motion by the council? Seeing none? Councilor Crowe?
Quick question. We're going to be trying to attract people by having a low fee. What is the average fee a municipality with these units charge? Not what we're going to charge, but what is the average?
So we have seen that there's two ways to do this. You can either do a flat fee or you can do a per kilowatt hour fee. We have seen charges on Cape as high as 45 cents. We're looking at 25 cents. The average fee is somewhere in the high 30s.
Okay, if they're looking on their app for a charging place, they're price sensitive. Why wouldn't we have it somewhere in between so we at least pay off what our share of these costs are in a more expeditious way?
Well, I think that is our goal, and I think what we'll do is we'll take a look at the usage initially. Sean and I have kind of talked about this. This first year, people know about the ones that we have, but Barnstable is not well represented on its public chargers on these apps. So people are used to going to other places. So in this case, if somebody does do a search as to where in Hyannis can I charge my vehicle, and they're doing that because of the cost center, they're going to come here, they're going to find out where they are, and then we can start to bring it in line with the other communities. We felt starting low and going up was a little better than starting high or at the average price and then not getting a lot of usage. It really is to our advantage to get people aware of where these are going to be. It's a philosophy.
Oh, I agree with that, but I'm thinking that charging pennies instead of charging, 15 cents is leaving us short on the return. And if somebody's price sensitive, it'll still be the lowest out there. Okay, so I just think we should charge a little bit more to start.
Good advice, sir. The fee structure comes up in the fall under the traditional cycle of town manager fees, so we can take that under advisement. Thank you.
Okay, any further discussion? Seeing none, the Assistant Town Clerk, Janet Murphy, for a roll call majority vote, please.
Councilors: Burdick,
Yes.
Clark,
Yes.
Crow,
Yes.
Levesque,
Yes.
Ludke,
Yes.
Mendes,
Yes.
Neary,
Yes.
Penn.
Yes.
Schnepp,
Yes.
Tamish. Tamish.
Yes.
Turkelson.
Yes.
Bloom.
Yes.
12 yes. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Okay, item 2024-240. Counselor Schnapp? And I believe this is going to be a two-thirds vote, not a majority vote. There's a misprint on the agenda.
So the agenda's correct, not the?
No, this will be a two-thirds vote, not a roll call majority.
Okay. So this is a matter of old business requiring a public hearing and a roll call two-thirds vote of the full council. Item number 2024-240, appropriation order in the amount of $1,150,000 in Community Preservation Act funds, authorizing the acquisition of property located at 211 Cedar Tree Neck Road, Marston's Mills, for open space and recreation purposes.
Second.
That's
Do I
right.
hear a second? All right. All in favor? No, excuse me. Motion. I have a motion. I've got to make a motion to open a public hearing. Is that correct?
So moved.
Okay. Second. All in favor of opening a public hearing? Yeah. Okay. I would like to recognize Lindsay Council from the Community Preservation Commission.
Thank you, Vice President Tamish. At the June 17th, 2024 Community Preservation meeting, the 6 committee members present voted unanimously to recommend to the Town Council, through the Town Manager, the Marina Enterprise Fund's request for a total of $1,150,000 in Community Preservation Act funds to be transferred first from the Open Space Recreation Fund and the remaining balance to be transferred from the undesignated fund for the acquisition of 211 Cedar Tree Neck Road, Marston's Mills, Assessors Map 076, Parcel 025. The property directly abuts the marina at Prince Cove that is owned by the town of Barnstable and allow for a phased expansion of the marina, providing additional public access to the water, supporting multiple recreation uses, and maximizing the town-owned marina. Funds not used for the purchase of the property will be returned to the Community Preservation Act Fund. Funding for any future expansions will be provided by the Marina Enterprise Fund. And with us, we have Derek Lawson from MEA to do the presentation.
Good evening, councilors. Derek Lawson, Director of Marine Environmental Affairs. As Mr. Council just alluded to, so we're looking to purchase the property here at 211 Cedar Tree Neck Road in Marston's Mills. That's just the location, the aerial view, and here's a better image for you. This is directly abutting the Prince Cove Marina, and I believe this will assist us with getting more folks out on the water and access to the water. There's some safety concerns with the entrance, how it's currently configured. The entrance to the marina and the exit to the marina are currently in the same location. The idea with this purchase is to have a better flow and entrance on one side of the marina and exit on the other side. This could lead to possible dock reconfigurations as well as potentially a fixed pier, which would help bolster the Marina Enterprise Fund. And here's just the last image. It's the property to the left, probably your left, and I'd be happy to answer any questions.
Okay. Any discussion on my left? Councilor Neary.
Thank you, Vice President Tamish. This is quite a nice property, and I'm curious. I'd like to buy it. It seems a good deal on the dollar as well. Will you be keeping the existing structure, or possibly maybe making that the marina headquarters, for lack of a better word?
So we do a lot of our own construction for the Marina Enterprise Fund, and we need space. We would look at this house and potentially use that space for building our docks.
We haven't really done a lot of research into the property just yet. We wanted to get this in front of you. Waterfront property doesn't come up that often. And to really maximize the use of the marina in this property, well, anything is on the board. We would be running it through the Waterways Committee for any changes, any ideas, and to have your thoughts as well as the public.
Just as a follow-up, if I may, it's just a little bit curious on the very end. It says funding for any. No, I'm sorry. It said something about money will be returned. So is it you're in maybe a negotiation or something?
There could potentially be a negotiation on the price. Correct. You're welcome. Thank you.
Any further discussion on my left? Councilor Clark?
I'm supportive of this. It's a unique opportunity to get access to the waterfront, and I thank your department for having the foresight to do that kind of initiative, and the property owner for working with the town. Thanks.
Councilor Crowe?
A quick question. It looks like the way it is configured now, you enter, and I can see the tracks going around, you exit. Isn't that what we already have versus using this property to do that? Or explain how it goes.
So if we acquire the new property, we would take down the fence and have the exit on that side of the property. You can see the tracks where the pavement is. You would come down through the parking lot and exit on the other side.
It looks like now they just exit around that little tree and then go back out the same way.
That is correct. And
I can't see from the trees off the road, is it a separate exit or the same one that comes in?
it's the same one.
Same one. Okay, so that's what you're talking about,
About the
making it
safety
easier for
concerns.
people to get out.
Yes.
Is there a line of people that comes here to put their boat down in the daytime? So
Yes, this is a
it's
very
all-
popular deep water boat ramp. It's probably the best one in the town where you can get large vessels in. On the weekend, if you're not there by 7 a.m., 8 o'clock, you're not getting into the parking lot.
As it goes now, you come in this entrance and then you come back around. You can't get back out unless there's a space to get back on that road.
When boats are lining up there and trailers are lining up there, it is difficult to get back out.
Okay,
correct.
thank you.
Okay, any discussion on my right? Councilor Schnapp?
Thank you, Vice President Tamish, and thank you, Derek. I'm probably going to bring a contrarian view here. I don't doubt that 1.15 for a waterfront property is a good price. I'm just not sure it's a really great use of our CPC funds. I'm not seeing a significant increase in access, maybe an improved access. And I don't know if it really is, my concerns primarily are one of equity. I don't see this serving a real large portion of our population. And it's boat owners and, it provides a little bit more access. So that's my initial concern about this significant investment of public dollars, where most things at the marinas use the Marine Enterprise Fund, which is funded by the users of the marinas, which, I think makes sense to most of us. So this would be kind of a external ask for this kind of funding. And I know that it's busy because I know this area. I know. I also don't know if there's been sufficient really planning on how this is going to be used. And again, most likely because of the timing. You don't have a lot of time, but I'm looking at this parcel, and I'm looking at conservation buffers. I'm looking at terrain. I'm not seeing as much possibility except maybe making an exit for the current parking. I also have a concern that 9 years ago, the council approved a CPC allocation of funding, actually much less, to buy a three-acre parcel, just a little bit up the road. And it was also for open space and for parking purposes. So again, I feel like this is a fairly significant ask for not as much return as I'd like to see. So thank you.
Okay. Just to take your questions or your comments in order, I believe this also helps folks out with small vessels, kayaks, the kind of folks that go out and do a little bit of fishing in the Three Bays area. They can park there, they can launch there. They have a dedicated boat ramp just for small vessels. So I think those folks would enjoy that additional access. As far as parking, yes, the property is a little graded, steep hill down there, but I do believe that we would be able to get additional parking as well as the potential for more dock space, to get more docks in or a fixed pier that is in front of that property. So I do think that there is opportunities there.
That's a tight fit.
It would take dredging, and it would take some money, but that would be from the Marina
I
Enterprise
mean,
Fund.
what's the estimate for the infrastructure improvements? I'm looking at several $1 million to bring this to fruition.
The Marina Enterprise Fund has a very healthy reserve. One of their notes just recently came off, which put the bulkhead in here. This is a beautiful facility. This is my favorite facility in the town. I use it quite a bit. And I think the potential for that property is there. And even if it's long-term, but there's a lot of potential there.
So if there's sufficient reserves, is it possible that the Marine Enterprise Fund could make this purchase and cover its own debt service?
That I don't have the answer for right now. I could look into that. However, the reason why we did go through Lindsay and the CPC, we asked if this would be an appropriate use, and they said yes. I went to their committee, and they approved it unanimously.
Okay.
Any further discussion? Councilor Crowe?
The Marine Enterprise Fund, I assume, is funded by boat owners and boat users. Is that correct?
Yes, users of the marina.
Okay, and if this comes to fruition, do you see a higher volume going in and out of this area?
I do, because we'd be able to create more space, get more folks in there, and get more folks out on the water. So yes, I do believe there would be a higher volume of vehicles, trailers, using the boat ramp.
Okay, thanks.
Councilor Clark?
Thank you very much, Vice President Tamish. I'd like to also mention that this area, I believe, still hosts the town's floating upweller system that serves to the shellfish propagation program. And my understanding in some of the alternative options that the town is considering for dealing with our nitrogen loading is that the engineering department is looking to investigate the viability of increasing aquaculture in Warren's Cove just down the way, just south from this landing, to improve our water structure and dovetail with CWMP, perhaps to improve our waterways at a faster rate than just relying on sewering. I also know that this landing serves the commercial shell fishery, especially in the winter, because it is so far up the river that it often is less likely to freeze up. So it does have, it does serve our working waterfront in a unique way in our town. Thank you.
All right. Councilor Turkelson?
Thank you, Vice President Tamish. I'm wondering if Mr. Council would want to speak to any of the concerns that Councilor Schnapp raised as part of the CPC.
Thank you. One of the issues with the previously purchased land on Prince Ave was the fact that it was far enough away where it really should have had a sidewalk put in. So we did acquire it with the good idea of a parking lot, but when we got the prices from DPW, the sidewalk was going to be $1 million. So that's why that project hasn't gone forward. It's just too dangerous to put walkers on that road. But I think the public access part of it is really important, and some of the comments have been about smaller boats, and I think that's what this facility really could be used for. Kayakers, those types of people who are often left out of the scene when you start trailering in and bringing in vessels from other areas. So I think if the development could be more towards the smaller boater and public access for that would be great. Even where you could rent a motorboat and go out and shellfish would be a great idea.
And I also like Councilor Clark's suggestion of expanded aquaculture. We started that years ago up there. They grow very quickly, as Chris will tell you, and there's waters up there. And if there was any expansion that this could be used for, any of that would be great. Thank you.
Just
Okay,
a
any-
quick follow-up on that.
Sure.
Derek, don't the users of that parking lot pay an additional permit fee for the use of that parking, I believe?
So slip contract holders, the owners of the vessels that are in the slips, they get one parking pass for free, and they can purchase an additional parking pass. There's also several parking spots that are available for
trailers,
for beach resident stickers. So there's a handful. There's maybe 8 spots that folks can come and park that don't have a slip, and want to get out on the water. The intent with this purchase is to incorporate more of those spots, to have folks be able to come down with just their resident sticker, park there, and be able to get out on the water.
For some reason, I thought that those who had trailers and parked there had to have a little bit more expensive permit than just a beach sticker.
Okay, the folks that park their trailers there, they do pay per day or per season for parking.
Okay.
It's $10 for a vehicle, and it's $20 for a vehicle and a trailer.
So right now, if I just got down there early enough, I could bring my car top and use that parking for my kayaks?
You could.
Okay. Councilor Crowe.
Thank you, Craig. Is this open for companies that provide kayaks and drop them off and drive through and leave? I've done that a number of times, not at Prince Cove. Are they prohibited from doing that there?
No, they're not prohibitive. The 2 ramps to the water there's no charge. You can drop something off, and then you can continue, if you just want to drop something off, that's fine.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
Any further discussion? Okay. Anyone from the public who would wish to be heard? Do I have a motion to close the public hearing?
Second.
In a second? All right. All in favor of closing the public hearing? Oh, yeah. All opposed? Seeing none? Okay, this was a 2/3 roll call vote, was it? 2/3 roll call vote. Madam Assistant Town Clerk.
Councilors Clark,
Yes.
Crow,
Yes.
Levesque,
Yes.
Ludke,
Yes.
Mendes,
Yes.
Neary,
Yes.
Penn,
Yes?
Schnepp,
No. No.
Tamish,
Yes.
Turkelson,
Yes.
Bloom,
Yep.
Burdick,
Yes.
11 yes.
One no. Okay, the motion passes. Okay, new business. I would like to have a motion to take items number 25-001, 002, 005, and 006 as a... I'm sorry? Oh, I'm sorry, okay. 1, 2, and 6 as a consent, as a group, to be moved to a public hearing on 8/15/2024.
So moved.
Do I have a second? Okay. All in favor, signify by saying aye. Aye. Any opposed? No? Okay, motion does pass. 25003. Councilor Mendes, if you would read that, please.
Thank you, Mr. Vice President. This is new business. Item number 2025-003 may be acted upon majority vote. Resolved to approve the appointment of John Curran Jr. as the Director of Assessing for the Town of Barnstable.
Second. Okay. Director Milne.
Thank you, Vice President Tamish. It is my pleasure to present to you this evening our recommendation for the new Director of Assessing, John Curran. An interview team comprised of myself, our Human Resource Director, Town Attorney, and Building Commissioner conducted the interviews, and we unanimously supported John as our recommended candidate. He has over 10 years' experience in the assessment administration field, most recently working as the town assessor in Westwood, Mass., and previous to that, Norfolk, Mass., and Rentham, Mass. His extensive real estate appraisal experience, having operated his own real estate appraisal business for several years, and he's actively involved in the Massachusetts Association of Assessing Officers, continuously enhancing his professional development, and possesses a BA degree in business management from Boston College. John spent many years of his youth growing up in Mashpee, where his family still owns a home, so he's very familiar with the Cape. He currently resides in Norwood, Mass., and his plans are to relocate with his family down here on the Cape once again. Thank you. And he is here tonight if you have any questions for John.
Okay, any questions on my right? Councilor Lidke.
Yeah, I was curious, is that your primary motivation was to return to Cape Cod, was to pursue this job?
Yes, it was. Yeah, it's always been my goal to come back down here, and when I did see the job posted, it looked attractive. My wife works fully remote, and it was just a time. It was always part of our plan. We're just executing it a little earlier.
Okay, thank you.
Welcome.
Councilor Bloom?
Yeah, welcome, Mr. Curran. Have you had a chance to familiarize yourself with some of the history of our assessment division, the recent history?
I have not. I've done some research on the town itself, but not specifically within the assessor's office.
Okay. All right. I was wondering what your some of your chief goals might be, considering what's happened in the last couple of years here, but I guess you can't really speak to that.
Without the benefit of knowing what's gone on the last couple of years, that would be tough to answer, but...
That in no way makes me not want to vote for you.
Okay.
It was just a question.
I'd like to hear all about it and, find a course to correct anything that may have been wrong.
Yeah.
Councilor Turkelson.
Nice to meet you, Mr. Kern Jr. My concern in hiring somebody new, I just hope that customer service is part of what you have exhibited in your past roles, because I've had some feedback from some people in my own personal experience that our former person wasn't so great at those things. So I guess I'm just saying that out loud, that it's one of the things that I would hope that you would bring to this job on top of the technical skills that you have, is the interpersonal skills that I think that this job requires. And I know you don't know some of the problems. Unfortunately, that would probably be helpful if you knew some of those things, that what you're getting yourself into possibly. But I think, there's been some issues going on, and I think there are some people that have maybe been disappointed in how those things were handled. So the interpersonal part is something you're going to have to bring to the job. So I hope that you're ready for that.
It's very important to me, customer service. If you were to check back with the town of Westwood, you'll see that one of the things they were sad about me leaving was how well I worked with the public, the taxpayers, the residents in town. So I hope I will continue that same service here.
On my left, any questions or discussion? Seeing none? Okay. We move to a vote. This is a majority vote. Okay. All in favor is the motion as made. Please indicate by saying aye. Aye. All opposed? No? It is unanimous. Welcome, Mr. Curran.
Welcome.
Okay. Item 2025-004. Councilor Turkelson, how about you?
Thank you, Vice President Tamish. This is an item of new business that may be acted upon by a majority vote. Item 2025-004, authorization to contract for and expend fiscal year 2024 and fiscal year 2025 public safety answering point and regional emergency communications center development grants in the total of $611,544 from the Commonwealth of Massachusetts Executive Office of Public Safety and Security.
Second.
All right. Chief Chalice, if you could fill us in, please.
Good evening, councilors. Jean Chalice, Chief of Police. As you're aware, Barnstable, Yarmouth, and Sandwich have been exploring the feasibility of developing a regional emergency communication center that would be physically located here in Barnstable to combine our dispatch services for those communities. The intermunicipal agreement has been signed by all 3 towns, and we're now requesting permission to expend the grant funds we've been awarded in order to begin the design process for the facility. In fiscal year 24, we were awarded $373,090, and our FY25 award was $238,454, bringing the total to the $611,544. The state granted us an extension on those FY24 funds, so that's why we're able to combine them into the FY25 funds. And those combined funds will allow us to begin design and architect services to look at siting and a design plan for the physical facility. The town architect is going to be assisting in the process of determining who will provide those design services, and once the design services are complete, we'll be moving forward with a request for a construction grant. And to date, every community that has completed that design grant process has been awarded a full construction grant to cover the cost of the construction.
Fantastic. Any questions on my right? No? Any questions on my left? Councilor Neary.
Thank you, and thank you, Chief. Location, it's going to be on the property, the physical property of the current
The
department?
plan is now to site it somewhere on the property of the police department.
Okay, all right, and I would assume it's going to be a pretty substantial facility, right, to house all that?
I believe they've ranged it between 4,000 and 6,000 square feet, but that was the Collins study that was 2021, and I think we've all agreed that that might need to be amended.
Yeah, it sounds a little tight, but okay, thank you very much.
Any further discussion? Okay. Okay, can we go for a vote on this? This is a grant acceptance, and it was just a majority, right? Majority vote. Okay. All those in favor of the motion as read, please indicate by saying aye. Aye. All opposed? The motion passes.
Thank you.
Thank you, Chief. Okay, 2025-005, first reading. Councilor Clark, could you?
Thank you very much, Vice President Tamish. This is new business with the first reading being referred to a second reading on August 15th, 2024. Agenda item 2025-005, order authorizing a housing development incentive program tax increment exemption agreement between the town of Barnstable and BRAT LLC for 36 new market rate residential rental units located at 199 Barnstable Road, Hyannis, Mass. 02601.
Okay, do I have a second?
Second.
Okay. Now we go for a vote on this? Okay.
No discussion.
All those in favor of referring this to a second reading on 8/15, please indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. All opposed? Seeing none, the motion passes. And I think that's it, right?
Motion to adjourn.
Okay, is anyone interested in making a motion to adjourn? Yeah.
So moved.
So moved. All in favor of adjourning, so motion passes. Oh, excuse me. Did we miss?
That was all.
Yeah.
That was on the consent agenda. Yeah, okay. All right. We're adjourned.
Nice job.